Chapter 1660. Kill, kill, kill. The remaining soul formation cultivators and nascent soul cultivators all fought with Zhou Xian without caring about their own safety. Zhou Xian showed no mercy. He took out the absolute sky sword which split the sky and illuminated the world. A living fossil with a lifespan of 10,000 years was beheaded by Zhou Xian. The divine treasure was also crushed by the law of sword. Cultivator, you killed the innocent. You're inhumane. You'll die a horrible death. Then a tall, curvy and beautiful princess of a dynasty with a nascent soul cultivation level roared loudly. Crystal tears rolled down her pretty face like a pear blossom in the rain. Bang! Zhou Xian was cold and indifferent to the extreme. He didn't even spare her a glance before casually swinging out his palm and directly slapping her into mush, causing sparkling and translucent drops of blood to scatter down like rain. Retribution. I've never been afraid of retribution. I said I'd destroy the ruins of immortality, so I'll destroy the ruins of immortality. Zhou Xian charged in with his sword without any mercy. The tip of the sword slashed across the gold-like floor, creating sparks. He was like a demon or a god. The current him could be said to be terrifying to the extreme, causing people to be terrified and unable to speak. Cultivator, you slaughtered my people and killed my ancestors. You're really a supreme demon. Others are afraid of you, but I'm not. Kill. Prince Xia's eyes were bleeding. He gritted his teeth and the muscles on his cheeks trembled. He rushed toward Zhou Xian with a sword. Prince, don't. You're the last symbol of the dynasty. If you die, everything will be over. Go. Grand Chancellor Yan Wan pulled him and flew toward Sky Palace. Let's go. It's enough for me to stay here. Sky River Star Lord also used many laws to cover Xia and cover his retreat. Prince Xia and his people were like stray dogs. They boarded a flying ship and headed for Sky Palace, which was hanging in the sky. That was the last fortress of the dynasty, the last command post. At this moment, the entire ruins of immortality fell into despair and was completely silent. It could be said that no one had expected such an ending. This was unacceptable to them. Prejudice was like a huge mountain in a person's heart that was difficult to remove. In their eyes, Zhou Xian was not even a lowly native descendant of the deity ground. He was the descendant of the abandoned people of Middle Saturn who had been abandoned by the deity ground. In their eyes, Zhou Xian was like an ant. Therefore, no matter how valiant Zhou Xian's battle record was, no matter how amazing his battle prowess was, in their eyes he would lose in the next moment. The cultivators and mortals of the ruins of immortality were very arrogant and had a strong sense of racial superiority. This was not surprising. Back when the wood spirit homeworld was destroyed, and when the deity realm had yet to reach the orbit of Alpha Centauri, they too had suffered from cosmic storms, cosmic calamities, and the destruction of spaceships. Deaths were a common occurrence, and the descendants of the wood spirit homeworld had once doubted themselves, believing that the wood spirit homeworld was cursed, inferior, and should vanish from the face of the world. When the ruins of immortality imperial court was established and the South Gate 3 stars once again began to expand and move, this thought once again surfaced in his mind. In order to dispel this thought, the ruins of immortality imperial court had always promoted the bloodline of the wood spirit homeworld as the most powerful and excellent race in the universe. That was why they couldn't accept it when Zhou Xian pushed the ruins of immortality. The ruins of immortality imperial court had a vast territory and an everlasting foundation. It had the academy, the sky palace, the ruins emperor's palace, 6 grotto heavens, 36 provinces and thousands of sects. There were hundreds of soul formation cultivators and countless talents. There were also countless giant cities, arrays, restrictions, and even the terrifying deity slaying platform and the divine beast array. There were also countless invincible living fossils, the divine emperors of the past, the ancestral patriarchs of the wood spirit homeworld, and even the remnant soul of the tyrant. Any one of these would make people feel that they were unshakable. When all these factors were added up, the country would be forever secure and foolproof. But all of this was torn to pieces in front of Zhou Xian as if they were made of paper. All of this had been destroyed by an ant from an abandoned planet in the deity ground. It was as if someone had used an egg to smash Mount Tai, or a praying mantis to overturn a chariot. It was too shocking and unbelievable. Cultivator, do you know? Those who kill will be killed by others. You've killed too many people. You'll suffer retribution. Suddenly, Song Ming regained his spirit and snorted coldly. I've killed too many people. Where's my retribution? Bring it on. Jiang Tian was disdainful, and he sneered indifferently as he calmly massacred all along the way and killed those fishes that escaped the net. Kong Teichu, do you know why we're fighting to the death? Song Ming suddenly shouted as if he had gone crazy. Because 1,000 years ago the expedition army of the Ruins of Immortality had already gone to Earth on spaceships. Not long ago they sent back a message saying that they had arrived on Earth. Do you know how many powerful cultivators we sent? It's no exaggeration to say that we're on par with the overlords who stayed in the Ruins of Immortality. 100 soul formation cultivators. When Jiang Tian heard this, his pupils abruptly constricted and his heart thumped. He said in a cold voice, "Is that true? Ancestral Patriarch, how could you say that?" As a matter of fact, Star Lord Tianhe almost screamed when he saw Song Ming tell him the whole plan. However, when he saw Jiang Tian's body tremble slightly, and a hint of confusion and fear appeared in his eyes, Star Lord Heavenly River immediately restrained his aura and remained motionless. He was ready to attack as he carefully stared at Jiang Tian. A mental battle. A loophole. At that moment, Tianhe Star Sovereign finally understood why Song Ming had said those words. Jiang Taichu's temperament was too ruthless and vicious, and he didn't fear death. It seemed that the collapse of the world, the reversal of the sun and the moon and the extinction of all living things wouldn't affect him at all. He didn't care about retribution at all. However, he was also a human being. He had his weaknesses and emotions. The reason why he had slaughtered so many people was because he loved the ancestral planet, his homeland, and the people there too deeply. The more he killed, the deeper his love. He was too afraid of losing that piece of land, too afraid that the blue planet would be destroyed. His only fear was losing his family and home. Only by saying that would he reveal a loophole in his Tao heart and have a chance to kill Jiang Tian. Also, what was the point of not saying that? There were quite a few cultivators who knew about this. At least a few thousand. After Jiang Tian took over the Ruins of Immortality, the truth would come to light sooner or later. If he didn't kill Jiang Tian, there was no way he could hide this. How can it be fake? 2,000 years ago, Divine General Tian Mu led the expedition to the Ruins of Immortality. Star Lord Tianhe took out a small metal ball. It was a Dharma artifact with images. Immediately, it shone brightly. 2,000 years ago, many cultivators rode on Dharma artifacts to conquer Earth. The images were vividly displayed in front of Jiang Tian. Could it be that I couldn't protect it? With Jiang Tian's insight and experience, he was naturally able to tell that these images were not fake. Instead, they were real history. At that time, many divine emperors saw him off. Some of the cultivators were as powerful as the divine emperors. There were Dharma laws and Tao fragments. Apparently, they were soul formation and nascent soul cultivators. There were too many people. There were dozens of soul formation cultivators and nascent soul cultivators. Besides, they carried countless large Dharma artifacts and true artifacts, which were enough to shatter Earth. Soul formation cultivators. Not to mention soul formation cultivators, even a nascent soul cultivator can destroy all human beings in 3 days. Jiang Tian smiled sorrowfully, looking incomparably miserable. A deep sense of defeat surged in his heart. After 10,000 years of cultivation, he had accumulated countless experience and returned to Earth. He had gone through countless hardships and tribulations along the way. What was it for? Just to change his fate. Just to be with her for the rest of his life. Just to protect that small home. However, he still couldn't protect it. He could totally imagine it. Qing'er was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. She was never willing to bow down to the cultivators who went to the Ruins of Immortality. She would even lead them to fight to the death. But even if Qing'er had a deity-grade golden core, she couldn't fight against a nascent soul cultivator. At most, she would be defeated by a half-soul formation cultivator. If dozens or hundreds of soul formation cultivators attacked together, Qing'er would definitely die miserably. And his daughter. When he left, she was still in infancy. Her face was wrinkled, but she had a pair of big black eyes. She could only whimper and didn't even call him dad. Zhang Beibei. And his parents, Sister Ziwei Linge, his brothers in arms, the disciples of Tianqing school. They would all die. At this moment, Jiang Tian was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He felt as if his heart had been hollowed out. Now. Song Ming sent a message with his immortal will. Suddenly, 7 or 8 soul formation overlords tore through the air and silently approached Zhou Xian. Without saying a word, they self-destructed. Clang. The Dharma laws were like a sea of fire and the great Tao was like shrapnel. This explosion was like dozens of supernuclear weapons exploding at the same time. The billowing smoke and dust dispersed. Zhou Xian was covered in blood. He had broken countless bones and even his spirit embryo was cracked. All the phenomena around him disappeared. Zhou Xian didn't move. He lowered his head and opened his mouth. Blood and tears rolled down his cheeks. He chuckled like a fiend god. They won't die. I have my plans. They won't die. Kill. A low shout came out of Zhou Xian's mouth, and an unprecedented cold killing intent rose in his heart. Chapter 1661. Zhou Xian wasn't lying. Before the recovery of spirit qi, he had gathered a group of people like Ghost Emperor Mang Mountain to rebuild the netherworld and the 6 paths of reincarnation on Earth. In short, if Zhou Xian's people died in battle, Ghost Emperor Mang Mountain would also use their secret techniques to keep the souls of the dead alive, and Zhou Xian would use his divine powers to help them rebuild their bodies. However, Zhou Xian wasn't 100% confident. Firstly, Ghost Emperor Mang Mountain's soul-capturing and ghost-nurturing technique wasn't very good to begin with, and there would always be mistakes. Zhou Xian had taught them some methods to control souls, but when Zhou Xian left Earth, they were still in a state of dissatisfaction. Secondly, the cultivators of the ruins of immortality were too powerful. When they killed someone, they could completely destroy their divine souls. They wouldn't give you a chance to re-enter the reincarnation cycle. If they die, I'll kill everyone in the ruins of immortality. Let's do it. Zhou Xian's thoughts were in a mess, but his face was cold and his eyes were fierce, like an evil dragon that was about to devour people. But at this moment, all the soul formation cultivators were silent. No one dared to move forward. Instead, they all stepped back and formed a formation. Near the wood spirit ancestral peak, there were a few auras that weren't inferior to Songming's. But at this moment they became silent again, like dormant poisonous snakes waiting for an opportunity. Everyone knew that this was the time when Zhou Xian's Taoist heart was unstable and the loophole was the biggest. Whether it was a sneak attack or a self-detonating god, killing Zhou Xian was the most likely thing to happen. But at the same time, Zhou Xian was also the most murderous at this moment. For a moment no one moved. The cultivators of the ruins of immortality weren't afraid of death, but the remaining soul formation cultivators were their last bargaining chip. If they killed them, they would be gone. So even if they died, they had to exhaust Zhou Xian to death. Only then could they rest in peace. Demon Zhang appeared and attacked the ruins' capital. The cultivators of the ruins of immortality were all out to kill Kong Teichu. But there were still some cultivators in Sky Palace to monitor the space and the many planets in the lower world. Monitor my ass. First of all, Kong Teichu is about to attack and destroy our surveillance station. Secondly, the South Gate's 3rd star would erupt in a few decades or even a few years. Why don't we run away like we did with the fireworks plan? A little Seacombe complained out of boredom. Yes. I don't think it's meaningful either. We should rush to the front lines and kill Demon Zhang together with the other cultivators. What are you looking at here? Some cultivators agreed, sipping the jade fire wine and getting drunk. Today the ruins of immortality was in chaos. It was like the end of the world. Those on the battlefield seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. But other than that, he was completely drunk and wild. No one cared about him when he drank at work. In fact, in the entire Sky Palace, only the department dedicated to monitoring and studying the 3rd planet of the South Gate was functioning normally. The others had already dispersed or entered the battlefield. Although the department monitoring the 3rd planet of the Southern Gate was still operating, it was different from the past. It was very lazy. In the entire ruins of immortality, there was a popular thought that the problem of the 3rd planet of the South Gate could not be solved, and there was no point in continuing to observe. Suddenly, the little Seacombe looked at the screen of the artifact and cried out in surprise. He was so scared that he spilled the jade fire wine and said, "Ah, a meteorite? Isn't the distance too long?" Everyone turned their heads. Through the screen they saw, under the dark blue sky, a bright meteor-like light was rapidly flying towards the continent of the ruins of immortality from hundreds of millions of miles away. The primordial chi layer of the continent of the ruins of immortality was about 100,000 miles thick. All meteorites that fell into the primordial qi layer would be burned by the high temperature caused by the friction of the primordial qi. Even a small planet would be destroyed by the primordial qi after flying about 30,000 miles. Moreover, this realm had also set up a spatial barrier. Countless invisible laws interweaved in the air. Not to mention meteorites and stars, even if it was an invading artifact, it would be identified and killed. The problem was that after this meteor streaked across 50,000 miles, it still did not extinguish. Instead, the light was even brighter and its speed was even faster. 1/5 of the speed of light. It's completely sublight speed. Could it be an alien invasion? But why is there no fluctuation of the laws? At this moment, the bored cultivators and Saikongs all stood up with shock and disbelief written all over their faces. It was as if they had seen a ghost. The fact that it could glide across 50,000 miles in the primordial qi layer without extinguishing meant that this object was extremely hard. It was not a naturally formed meteorite or meteorite. Moreover, it was so fast that it was very likely to be a Dharma artifact, and a Dharma artifact above the artifact refining level of the ruins of immortality. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Some people wanted to cry but had no tears. Some people were cursing. Someone picked up a communication Dharma artifact and called their superiors. Wasn't the ruins of immortality too full of disasters? Kong Teichu, the devil, had turned the ruins of immortality upside down. Wasn't that enough? Why was there such a terrifying Dharma artifact from another world? At this moment, the light screen of the Dharma artifact flashed and a line of golden words appeared. It has been detected that the aircraft is the unsetting sun, the ship of the expedition army of the ruins of immortality. Captain Divine General Tianmu. What? At this moment, many of the Sky Palace cultivators were frozen in shock. Then they began to laugh and cry. The army of the ruins of immortality expedition to Middle Saturn has returned triumphantly. The unsetting sun has returned to the ruins of immortality. Divine General Tianmu has returned. They hurriedly reported to Prince Xiahe. How is that possible? With their original speed, it would take them 1,000 years to return. Prince Xiahe was also full of disbelief. Your Highness, this sounds unbelievable. However, all signs show that there is no mistake. According to records, the Divine General Tianmu was in charge of the unsetting sun at that time. Now the starry sky soul tablet he left in Sky Palace has begun to flash and resonate. It proves that his divine soul is on the ship. A nascent soul stage great Sikong bowed and reported, his face full of flattery. The other great astrologer also had a face full of joy and said, although it is extremely rare for the speed of navigation to increase. But it is not impossible. I heard that although cultivation is not popular on Middle Saturn, they are not bad at making things like Trojan horses and other things. They call it technology. It is said that it is the same as our refining. I think that the collision of the two civilizations has inspired our refining civilization, so the speed has greatly increased. Humph, the abandoned people of the wasteland are just some tricks. What can they do? Prince Xiahe was relieved. He smiled proudly and said disdainfully, Congratulations, Your Highness. Not to be outdone, the other cultivator flattered. That's not all. After the test, there are 10 soul formation grand cultivators on the unsetting sun alone. There was a deity-level divine transformation realm warrior among them who seemed to be even more powerful than Songming. I think the divine generals on the expedition must have obtained the opportunity on Middle Saturn and reached the limit. Really? Did they really obtain the opportunity to become immortal on Middle Saturn? Previously, the sword god of the ruins Emperor's Palace told me that there is a popular saying in the Big Dipper sector that Middle Saturn has a great opportunity and great fortune. I didn't believe it at first, but if that's the case, I have no choice but to believe it. Prince Xiahe was shocked again. Your Highness, apart from the unsetting sun, there are also the Deep Sky Eagle, the Essence Conservation and the Tao Transformation in Heaven. There are 30 interstellar battleships in total. There are several soul formation grand cultivators on them, and their energy is comparable to that of ancestral patriarch Songming and Lord Heavenly River. They seem to be heading to the ruins capital. A young Sikong staggered as he flew in and shouted in a loud voice. He was pleasantly surprised. Let's go. Gather all the civil and military officials and follow me to welcome the victorious soldiers. Prince Xiahe was so excited that his body trembled. My expedition army has more than 100 soul formation grand cultivators. They have returned and taken control of Earth. I'd like to see how long Kong Techu can stay tough. No matter how capable he is, how can he challenge my divine generals? At that moment, Prince Shaha looked at Qin Fan with disdain and excitement. He was so happy that he almost floated in the air, as if he could already see Jiang Tian kneeling on the ground, trembling and begging for mercy. He was like a stray dog. Spread the good news. I want the entire ruins of deity to celebrate today. Our expedition fleet has reached sublight speed and we've only been on Earth for a few years. We're saved. He quickly gave the order as he rowed the flying ship towards the ruined capital. He wanted to personally see Jiang Tian's ugly appearance as he begged for mercy and wagged his tail. He wanted to enjoy the tragic scene of Jiang Tian being crushed, his flesh and blood flying everywhere and his soul being destroyed. Chapter 1662. The expedition army of the Ruins of Immortality has completely occupied Earth. They're back today. Star-level Dharma artifacts have reached sublight speed. Their refining skills have improved. The expedition army has obtained a great opportunity. Their soul formation realm cultivators are far more powerful than the previous divine emperors, sword gods and ancestral patriarchs. There are even deity-grade soul formation realm cultivators. The news spread too fast. Although many giant cities and defense lines had been broken along the way Jiang Tian killed his way here, the Ruins of Immortality was vast. Cities and sects were scattered all over the place and the communication between them was like a net. Therefore, Jiang Tian didn't destroy the communication system of the entire Ruins of Immortality. Immediately as the news from Sky Palace spread, the news swept across the entire Ruins of Immortality like a hurricane, setting off a huge wave. Oh my God, those shooting stars are our expedition ships. Yes, it's so bright. It's so fast. The Ruins of Immortality are saved. We have a new place to live. Earth. Countless mortal cultivators in the Ruins of Immortality were excited. Let's go. Let's go to the Ruins of Immortality and see the grand occasion. The acting sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven was full of joy and said loudly, "Scared? What's there to be scared of about Kong Techu? Do you know what it means to be a deity-grade soul formation realm cultivator? Kong Techu will be crushed like a chicken." The acting sect master was only a nascent soul cultivator. Because the sect master had already died in the battle of the Xiantian mountain range and the other nascent soul cultivators had all died in the battle of the Ruins of Immortality. After all, the Ruins of Immortality was about to be destroyed and he wouldn't be able to stay there for long. The acting sect master of the Grotto Heaven was just to maintain the operation of the deity slaying array. But he had never thought that he would pick up such a great opportunity. The expedition army of the Ruins of Immortality had returned and turned the tide. The Ruins of Immortality had stabilized a lot and they could also go to Earth. By then he would still be the sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven. That would be amazing. The other acting elders got up happily and rushed to the Ruins of Immortality on their flying swords and flying boats, fearing that they would be late to witness this historic moment. Alas! The dynasty is great and immortal. The plan of 2,000 years have finally come into play. How profound and how wonderful it is. An old man from the Jiang family, the guardian family, stood up proudly. The others were celebrating, hugging each other and crying bitterly. This was not limited to the world of cultivation. At this moment even the mortals, whether they were tycoons, merchants, beggars or refugees, were all beaming with joy. Billions of people in the Ruins of Immortality knew what those interstellar ships returning from Earth meant. And at that moment, the entire fallen immortal sea region was dead silent. Everyone's eyes were filled with sorrow and bitterness. Their hearts were in their throats. For His Majesty Absolute Beginning, this meant that he was bound to lose from the very beginning. Niu Duotian's eyes were hazy with tears. He didn't laugh at him, only deep sympathy. How many heroes of the past and present had been toyed with by fate? They were unable to defeat the heavens, and their ambitions for supremacy had all been for naught. There was no ridicule for Jiang Tian, only deep sorrow. In the ancient times, Emperor Xing, Emperor Zhongli, and Emperor Ao were all talents who led a powerful cultivation civilization. There were more than 1,000 soul formation grand cultivators among them, but they still lost to the descendants of the wood spirits. Jiang Tian was only one person and he was leading a group of stragglers, Yet he had to fight against a cultivation dynasty that had existed for 10,000 years and possessed a deep foundation. How difficult was that? Could be said that being able to last until then was already unprecedented. It was a record that the great bandits didn't even dare to think about. However, the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality was too powerful and had been planning for too long. Not only did they try to open up many worlds along the ancient universe path and reach Planet East through the portal arrays of the Ruins of Immortality system, they even had battleships in space. Besides, those battleships had already set off 1,000 years ago. Did we still fail? Long Xingnan was full of sorrow. Her body trembled slightly and her heart ached as if it were being cut by a knife. She had been fooled by the foolish policies of the Ruins of Immortality, just like the cultivators in the second-level worlds. She had forgotten history and was loyal to the Emperor of the Ruins. She used to think that the Emperor of the Ruins was superior, unshakable and the most honorable and sacred. Protecting the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality was her lifelong wish. However, after knowing Zhang Tian, she saw the truth of history. The dragon-rearing sect was destroyed and her parents and brothers were all killed. Only then did she realize the cruelty of the tyranny of the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality. As a result, she suddenly woke up following Zhang Tian, attacking the heavens, attacking the Ruins of Immortality. She was full of hatred and was prepared to die. But she didn't expect such an ending. The Ruins of Immortality was crazier than she had imagined, crazier than the great bandits. They gambled everything and started an expedition to the solar system 1,000 years ago. His Majesty. How could this be? How could we lose? Many great bandits and assassins sighed when they saw Zhang Tian being injured by the self-explosion of the soul formation realm cultivators. Some didn't say a word and just cried silently. Some were already crying out loud. Some gritted their teeth and clenched their fists. It wasn't that they were weak. They were all great bandits. They killed without blinking and their hearts were as hard as steel. Even if their parents and brothers were killed, they might not shed a single tear. But then tens of thousands of great bandits and countless descendants of the deity land shed tears only for Zhang Tian. What a pity. His Majesty was a rare talent. He was the most stunning overlord in the history of the Ruins of Immortality, including the ancient heavenly courts of the previous dynasty. He definitely had the bearing of a supreme emperor. Whether it was his cultivation arts, his combat power, his awareness or his vision, Zhang Tian had far exceeded everyone's imagination and reached an unimaginable height. It was as if the universe would be under his control one day. And yet it ended in such a regretful way. I can't accept this. Tu Fei roared at the sky, shaking the world. He stepped into the air and went straight to the Ruins of Immortality. His Majesty Taichu was so talented that he was invincible in the Ruins of Immortality with his nascent soul cultivation. Even the sword god of the Big Dipper Star region was killed by him with one strike. Even the master of the academy was no match for him. In his opinion, there was nothing Zhang Tian couldn't do and no enemy he couldn't suppress. But now it had ended like this. It was all in vain. The envoy hero was full of tears. His heart was full of anger, which turned into a desire to destroy. He wanted to rescue Zhang Tian. If he couldn't, he would die together with him. Kill. Bai Muxue cried like a cuckoo, full of infinite sadness and heartache. Her voice was loud and sharp, piercing the clouds and splitting the sky. She stepped into the air and followed Tu Fei. She was already in heart-wrenching pain. On the Fallen Leaf Lake in the Penglai world, she was surrounded by enemies. She was in a desperate situation and was rescued by Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian taught her the computational canon of supreme molecule and the art of deduction, treating her like a disciple. On the Xiantian mountain range, it was Zhang Tian who turned the tide. She had seen Zhang Tian's peerless demeanor, unparalleled domineering, cold-hearted and ruthless. She had also seen Zhang Tian's gentle smile when he talked about his dream and his hometown with the other senior bandits while intoxicated with alcohol. She had also seen Zhang Tian secretly take out photos of his wife and daughter, gently wiping them and smiling with tears in his eyes. She admired Zhang Tian's strength and majesty, but she also felt sorry for Zhang Tian's miserable battles. Although she respected him like a god, she also felt pity for him, which turned into deep and enduring love in the end. Now the earth that Zhang Tian was guarding had been lost and his spirit had completely collapsed. He only wanted to die in battle. Now the expedition army of the ruins of deity had returned and Zhang Tian was about to be surrounded. How could she not be sad? Don't be impulsive. We can't fight to the death. We have to persuade the heavenly the arch. We still have a chance to turn the tables. Niu Duotian wanted to persuade with tears in his eyes. When had the Taichu heavenly the arch who had dominated the world for thousands of years, ever been so miserable? He had been invincible ever since he entered the ruins of deity, but in the end he was so sad. Zhang Tian's future was limitless. The entire Milky Way and even the central galaxy would be under his control in the future. However, his rise was too short and he had taken on too many responsibilities that he shouldn't have. Everyone in the fallen deity see, attack the ruins and save the Taichu heavenly the arch. Yun Zhongzi held back his sadness and waved his hand with a serious face. Kill. Children, kill them all. The fallen deity sea has been burned. We can only win this battle, not lose. We can only go forward, not back down. The Green Dragon King's eyes were full of anger and he gritted his teeth. This was a desperate attempt to find a way out. This was cutting off all means of retreat and not leaving any way out for himself. Yes. Yes, ancestral patriarch. It's our honor to die for the heavenly the arch. Let's follow the Taichu heavenly the arch. Many of the great demons in the sea responded loudly. Their eyes were about to spurt blood as they rubbed their fists and palms with murderous intent. Kill, kill, kill. I'm going to break the ladle in Tsong Ming's coffin. Tian Shu threw the big wine jar on the ground and smashed it into pieces. The veins on his forehead bulged as he roared while waving his sword. It could be said that in their hearts Zhang Tian was a supreme existence and they revered him greatly. If they were asked to die for Zhang Tian, they would not hesitate in the slightest. Their loyalty to Zhang Tian was no less than the loyalty of the cultivators of the ruins of deity to the dynasty. In an instant, all the crystal warships in the fallen deity sea flew out and an army of tens of thousands of cultivators moved out. Ships with powerful auras and full of sword marks covered the sky as they streaked across the sky, heading for the ruins' capital. A moment later, the entire fallen deity sea was filled with earth-shattering explosions and waves of thousands of feet high. The soaring flames lit up the sky. The islands were instantly wiped out from the sea and the underwater palaces were turned into ruins in the blink of an eye. The cultivators of the great bandits stood on the warships like javelins. Their faces were solemn, but their eyes were filled with endless determination. They were ready to die. Their fists clenched the hilts and spears as if they couldn't wait to fight. At this moment, except for the ancestral temple and the ancestral tombs, the only large base that could resist the attack of the ruins of deity for thousands of years was destroyed. They were cutting off all means of retreat. Full speed ahead. But neither Yun Zhongzi nor the Green Dragon King, who had built the base of the fallen deity sea single-handedly, were moved. They just ordered the warships to speed up. The fallen deity sea was certainly important, but it was not worth mentioning compared to rescuing Zhang Tian. As long as Zhang Tian was still alive, there was still hope for a comeback. Chapter 1663. However, the bandits were also worried and uneasy. They also felt a sense of helplessness. The ships returning from the ruins of immortality were too fast as lightning. Some of the crystal ships of the bandits were left behind by the ancient heavenly courts of the previous dynasty, and some were seized from the army of the empire of the ruins of immortality during the battle. Generally speaking, they were all extraordinary military Taoist artifacts, which were far superior to ordinary civilian Taoist artifacts. But at this moment, compared to the returning ships, it was like comparing an ox cart to a bullet train. They could not be compared at all. Could it be that they obtained a great opportunity during the voyage or after arriving on Earth, that allowed their refining skills to improve rapidly? Could it be that the immortal ascension opportunity on Middle Saturn is not just a rumor? Bai Muxue and the others had once intercepted some confidential messages from the Empire of the Immortal Ruins, which talked about the immortal opportunity and the possibility of immortal ascension existing on Earth. However, it was only a few words and the specific details were unknown. Moreover, this saying came from the sword god of the ruins' emperor's palace. In the end, it came from the Big Dipper constellation. There had never been such a legend in the ruins of immortality. Middle Saturn had always been regarded as an abandoned planet. Later, the immortal trap array was activated and it entered the Age of Doom. In the sky above the ruins of immortality, An energy storm was raging. Blood dyed the world red. Blood smoke rose into the sky like essence chi smoke. Countless broken limbs, dharma artifacts, and the wreckage of arrays were scattered everywhere. The place was a mess. In the ruins' emperor's palace, there were endless bones, mountains of corpses, and seas of blood. Zhang Tian stood there. His eyes were like lightning as he looked up at the approaching crystal warships. His eyes were filled with hatred and fear. His fear. Since Zhang Tian was reborn, he had been fearless. He was not even afraid of gods and Buddhas. But at this moment he was afraid. He was afraid that the cruel reality would come true. Kong Teichu, I wanted to compete with you mentally and break your Tao heart. That's why I told you about the expedition. I didn't expect the expedition to be a success. I'm sure your parents, wife and children are all dead. They must be very miserable. Kong Teichu, you've killed thousands of people, left millions of corpses and treated human lives like grass. I thought you were a beast or a demon. But I didn't expect that you would also grow a human heart and feel pain. I really enjoy seeing you in pain. At the side, Song Ming, who was being suppressed by the stone cauldron, had already received the news. He was laughing so hard that his mouth was about to split from ear to ear. He roared loudly and spat out a mouthful of blood with every word he spoke. However, he didn't stop his mouth in the slightest, nor did he show any signs of pain. Instead, he was filled with joy as he madly mocked Zhang Tian. Kong Teichu, release our patriarch Song Ming. I'm afraid that the souls of your parents, wife and children are all in the hands of our expedition army. Kneel, submit, admit your guilt and repent. Perhaps their souls could be spared from the torture. I can even return it to you and let you reconstruct its body. Prince Shaha walked forward step by step. His back was straight and he looked majestic. His eyes were full of disdain and he was full of supreme majesty. He was like a high and mighty emperor reprimanding his subjects and criminals. Sky River Star looked up at the sky and saw that unsetting sun was getting closer and closer. He couldn't help but chuckle in glory. My grandson Tianmu is still alive. The soul tablet has already reacted. This crystal ship has been modified. It seems that we've made a great contribution. The disciples next to him nodded and smiled in agreement. This time, the previous emperors of the ruins of immortality, the unparalleled giants, and the masters of the paradises have all been defeated. We're in dire need of people. Tianmu returned with great contributions. He will definitely be put in an important position. He found a new place for his race to live, turned the tide and suppressed Kong Teichu. Tianmu's achievements are unparalleled, and his name will definitely be recorded in history. I'm sure that if Prince Shaha ascends the throne, he will be put to good use. He can definitely be called an unparalleled giant in the ruins Emperor's Palace, the Academy or the Sky Palace. Congratulations, Sky River Star. Everyone seemed to think that Zhang Tian didn't dare to resist and that victory was in their hands. They began to congratulate Sky River Star and Prince Shaha via telepathic thoughts. The situation took a turn for the worse. The victorious return of the expedition to Earth from the ruins of immortality changed the situation instantly. Zhang Tian, who had been aggressive and attacking crazily, was immediately restrained. The empire of the ruins of immortality, which had been defeated by Zhang Tian and was in dire straits, suddenly had someone to rely on. It seemed that it wouldn't be difficult for them to control Zhang Tian. The biggest difference between a battle in the cultivation world and a battle in the mortal world was that, for a cultivator, the real death was the death of the soul, not the death of the body. Therefore, generally speaking, the opponent's body would be destroyed and their power would be destroyed, but the soul would be restrained instead of being destroyed. It was because the soul could be used to suppress the family and friends of the owner of the soul and force them to submit in exchange for benefits. If the souls of Zhang Tian's family and friends were suppressed, he wouldn't be able to resist. You want me to submit? Zhang Tian grinned. There seemed to be a bit of madness in his eyes and the muscles around his mouth twitched nervously. In the entire universe, in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, who can make me, Zhang Taichu, submit? If the soul of my family is in your hands, give it to me and I'll spare you from death. His voice was like a cold gust of wind that blew over from the netherworld, and it was extremely terrifying. Although he was completely defeated, he wasn't weak at all. Instead, he made the cultivators of the ruins of immortality feel a sense of fear. Then Zhang Tian's eyes gradually calmed down as if he were hanging high in the sky. There wasn't a hint of emotion in them, Songming, Star-Lord Tianhe, Prince Xiahe, and the others narrowed their eyes and felt a chill in their hearts. They only saw indifference in Zhang Tian's eyes. Those weren't human eyes at all. There was no warmth in them, as if he were completely calm and rational, looking down at everyone. He didn't even care about the lives of his family members. He flicked his sword and sang, letting out dragon roars. His fighting spirit rose steadily as he shouted, "If you don't give me your divine soul, or if your divine soul has been destroyed, I'll make the entire ruins of immortality, billions of people, and even the descendants of the wood spirit planet in the universe die with my family." How can he be so strong? Everyone was suspicious. Even Songming couldn't believe it. Songming had lived through 3 eras. His lifespan was so long that it was difficult to calculate. He had seen through everything, but he still could not ignore his roots and bloodline. When his race was faced with a calamity of destruction, he could not stay out of it. Instead, he ignited himself and released his final light and heat. He listened to his own funeral song as if he was listening to a war song. He wanted to establish peace for his descendants. "Kong Teichu, do you think our ancestral patriarch is scaring you?" Sky River Star suddenly realized that Kong Teichu didn't want to submit because he thought the dynasty of the ruins of immortality was tricking him, and he didn't believe it at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to withstand such psychological pressure. Thinking of this, he waved his sleeves and stood with his hands behind his back. He said confidently and proudly, "Give up your fantasy. I'm not lying. The one who went on the expedition was my grandson, Divine Lord Tianmu. He was already a soul formation cultivator at that time, not weaker than me. Besides, he's proficient in space travel and many supreme cultivation arts. I don't think the entire Earth can resist him." Zhang Tian only snickered and didn't say anything. Then the unsetting sun finally arrived above the ruins of immortality. The size of this ship was too terrifying. It was like a mountain. No, it was more like a continent. It had a radius of more than 100 miles. And its size was incomparably terrifying. It blocked out the sky and dimmed the stars. It was an ancient bronze battleship with complicated components. There were tens of thousands of cabins with different functions, emitting a bright light. The body of the ship had a metallic texture and was full of complicated patterns, which were densely distributed and intertwined. There were many Dharma artifact components and some small aircraft attached to it, but they could fly freely. When the unsetting sun was at least 100 miles away from the ruins of immortality, a powerful and vast energy was released like a raging wave. Chapter 1664. He's so powerful. My soul is trembling as if it's going to crack. That's so terrifying. Is this the power of Divine General Tianmu? My primordial spirit is about to be crushed. Many of the powerful cultivators from the ruins of immortality were shocked, and began to back up as if they were fleeing from a primordial beast. A flying ship was even more terrifying than an entire continent crashing down. It was like the weight of the heavens itself. Many people couldn't withstand the terrifying energy waves coming from the rising sun. With the ruined capital as the center, the earth within tens of thousands of kilometers around it began to tremble, as if the skin of a drum was being beaten. "Welcome back, Divine General Tianmu." Divine General Tianmu went to Planet East and returned triumphantly. His achievements are astonishing. At that moment, all the cultivators below the soul formation level knelt and worshipped him. On one hand, they couldn't withstand the energy. On the other hand, they respected him from the bottom of their hearts. Tianmu, godly general, had risked his life to go on an expedition to Earth to find a new home for his race. Naturally, he was a hero in their hearts. Even soul formation grand cultivators couldn't fly and land on the ground. Tianmu is more than twice as powerful as when he left the ruins of deity. At that moment, Star Lord Tianhe was proud and happy. He's so powerful. Even I feel suffocated. If he has 100 more years, he'll be as powerful as I am at my peak. Even Songming felt a chill run down his spine when he sensed that peerless coercion. But he was also happy that the wood spirit civilization had a successor and the empire of the ruins of deity was going to be revived. Alas, could it be that Senior Tianmu has really found a great opportunity in the central planet? After Prince Xiahe's shock and surprise gradually subsided, jealousy and worry surged in his heart. The empire of the ruins of deity had used up all their trump cards in that battle. All the divine emperors had died and Songming was half dead. He wouldn't be able to survive for a few more years. The 9 troops and the noble families were almost wiped out. As for the Heavenly River Starlord's line, just the expeditionary army alone had grown countless times stronger. Perhaps the empire itself was going to be unstable. At that moment, all the cultivators and mortals of the ruins of deity had complicated emotions. They all had their own thoughts and plans. However, everyone turned their eyes to the Rising Sun City. Hoo. The Rising Sun battleship exhaled its aura and floated 10 miles above the ruins. It was about the same level as Jiang Tian Tianhe Star-Lord and Prince Xiahe. At this moment, the purple bronze ancient warship could be seen more clearly. The gigantic and majestic ship was covered in scars and dents. There were also signs of repairs. Some of the scars seemed to have been left behind by beast claws, but they were at least a few hundred meters long. They were probably the result of encountering a starry sky beast. The entire warship was riddled with scars, giving off an ancient vibe. Clearly, it had survived countless battles. At this moment, the terrifying fluctuations became even more intense. It was as if a primordial ferocious beast was awakening, and the entire world was about to collapse. The thousands of cultivators around the ruined capital, including the soul formation overlords, were all shocked. The power was too terrifying. At this moment they felt their soul cores were on the verge of splitting apart, and it felt as if blades were scraping their bones. It felt as if every single strand of their muscles were about to be peeled off while every single inch of their bones were about to break apart. Even the nascent souls of gods would be destroyed. Although it wasn't pleasant, their hearts were filled with joy and relief. The stronger the Heavenly Shepherd General was, the more miserable Kong Teichu's death would be. Dong. A dull sound was heard. The unsetting sun, which was even larger than a mountain range, shook and fell like rain. The cabin door opened and a gust of wind blew out. Every gust of wind was black and cut through the void. At this moment, a murderous aura rippled between heaven and earth. It was as if there was a billowing smell of blood gushing out of the cabin. It was extremely terrifying. It also felt as if the gates of hell had opened and a supreme demon was about to descend upon this world. It could destroy cities and countries, destroy worlds and planets. Billowing murderous aura swept out like a hurricane, filling the void. Bang! A foot stepped out. A pair of purple bronze boots wrapped around the sole of the foot. Black light surrounded the foot, and the murderous aura was extremely terrifying. The pressure was so terrifying that even Song Ming was a little breathless. Perhaps he could have stopped it when he was at his peak, but after all, he had already used up half of his life in the battle with Jiang Tian. Everyone's hearts trembled. Under everyone's gazes, this powerful being finally walked out. He was wearing a purple bronze battle suit. He was tall and majestic, and he was extremely domineering. The purple bronze battle suit was engraved with the pattern of the sun's fire. The helmet was also decorated with the sun. It was very exquisite and luxurious. However, he was surrounded by a kind of death aura. His face was pale as if he was a corpse that had been dead for countless days. There was no distinction between the pupils in his eyes. Instead, they were a demonic pitch-black color that was extremely deep. It was as if one's divine soul would fall into it and be unable to extricate itself. Its heavenly shepherd. Seeing the face that he hadn't seen in 1,000 years, Tianhe Star was filled with joy and tears. At this moment, dozens of divine generals walked out with Heavenly Shepherd General. Each of them had reached the limit and was far more powerful than ordinary soul formation cultivators. Although they couldn't compare to Song Ming at his peak, they were at least comparable to the previous divine emperors Headmaster Yu Sheng, and the sword god of the ruins Emperor's Palace. Oh my god! There are so many divine generals and each of them is so powerful. The ruins of immortality is in peace. Do you think Kong Teichu can still be so arrogant? I'm afraid he'll be scared to kneel down and surrender. Many cultivators were shocked. They discussed animatedly and rubbed their palms in excitement. Some even scolded Jiang Tian and asked Jiang Tian to kneel down. However, Jiang Tian's face changed slightly and a smile appeared on his face. His eyes softened and his will to fight disappeared without a trace. This kid knows that he's about to die. He can't be tough anymore. He must have been scared out of his wits by Heavenly Shepherd General. I didn't expect him to have such a day. Seeing this, everyone mocked him and said harshly. Even Prince Xiahe couldn't sit still when he saw Tianmu. He stepped forward and greeted him with a smile. He said loudly, "Tianmu, you've returned victorious from your expedition to Earth. I'm very happy and gratified. You've made a name for yourself in history." Suddenly, his expression turned cold as he looked at Zhang Tian, and he said in a cold voice, "However, I'll let you know that the ruins of immortality is in chaos. This Jiang Taichu is the villain that defied the heavens and came up from Earth, and he brought disaster to my country. You've been traveling for a long time. I should let you rest for a while, but this is urgent. I order you to kill this bastard immediately." Jiang Tian was still smiling faintly. The moment Heavenly Shepherd General walked out, Song Ming suddenly became quiet. He scanned Heavenly Shepherd with his immortal will and didn't miss a single detail. Suddenly his face changed and he shouted crazily, "Run, silly children." His voice was sharp and practically carried a sobbing tone, and it contained boundless terror and despair. "What? Ancestral Patriarch, why should I run?" Everyone's face changed. However, Prince Xiahe still didn't understand. He smiled a little unnaturally, but he didn't leave. "Run." Song Ming finally realized what was going on. Heavenly Shepherd and the other divine generals didn't return victorious. They had been sent there as captives. They had been refined into puppets and their divine souls were controlled. This meant that the expedition to Earth 1,000 years ago had failed completely and all of them had been wiped out. The spark of civilization on the Wood Spirit Star might have been extinguished before it even reached Earth. The ruins of immortality were all that was left of planet Wood Spirit. At this moment, from the perspective of preserving the future generations of the civilization, it was meaningless to fight Zhang Tian to the death. They could only run away at all costs to preserve their bloodline and their roots. However, before Song Ming could say anything, "I'm a corpse general under Kong Taichu and Zhao Xueqing. I'm here to protect Earth. Anyone who insults my master must be killed. Anyone who insults our planet must be killed." Hundreds of divine generals, including Tianmu Divine General, yelled at the same time. They drew their swords and turned into streaks of black light that tore through the air and charged forward. "What? How is this possible? They've become Kong Taichu's corpse generals. They've never even seen Kong Taichu. Who's Zhao Xueqing? Ancestral Patriarch, I'm your grandson." Prince Xiahe, Lord Tianhe and the Soul Formation cultivators were all dumbfounded when they saw the divine generals charging at them with swords. Shock, astonishment, fear, confusion, helplessness, panic. The expressions of the cultivators of the ruins of immortality couldn't be more interesting. Swish. That was a tragic scene. A one-sided massacre had begun. A divinity transformation stage Grand Cultivator was slashed in half by a corpse general. Blood dyed the sky red and hot internal organs flew everywhere. Even the white stubble of the bones was exposed. Clap. He was a divine transformation realm cultivator who could be considered a living fossil. He was once an extremely powerful minister and served 3 generations of divine emperors. He was majestic and awe-inspiring, but he was still smashed into pieces by a corpse general with a single slap. Blood splattered everywhere and his flesh and bones scattered in all directions like a beautiful flower blooming in the air. Even his divine treasures collapsed and the god was destroyed. That was simply a one-sided massacre. The corpse generals were ruthless. They were like tigers, wolves and a flock of sheep crushing everything. They were already stronger than the semi-god realm cultivators in the ruins of immortality. They had gone through inhuman evolution and had their souls controlled. They didn't feel any pain or fear at all. They only had one goal, which was to kill the enemy. They fought without any regard for their lives. "Arg! Why do you want to kill me?" Screams were heard all over the sky, which was extremely horrifying and tragic. Soul Formation Grand Cultivators died one after another. Their blood dyed the sky red and their organs and broken bones were flying everywhere. There were explosions like supernuclear explosions lighting up the sky. Countless bodies of the nascent soul and golden core cultivators fell to the ground like raindrops. That was an encirclement battle. It was extremely fast and the battle had come to an end in 10 seconds. Chapter 1665. I'm the Crown Prince. I'm Prince Xiahe, the Commander-in-Chief of the war in the ruins of immortality. I order you to stop. Prince Xiahe cried out in alarm when he saw a divine general mummy charging over and killing all the guards. He retreated in panic like a stray dog. However, it was useless. The corpse general's face didn't change at all, as if he were a statue. His black eyes didn't show any white, nor did they show any emotion. As the saber slashed down, the saber Dao laws scattered and shot out in all directions. Swish! Prince Xiahe was cut into hundreds of pieces and turned into a rain of flesh. His nascent soul, which was only 3 inches long, was slapped into pieces by the corpse general when it ran only 1 meter. Even its soul was obliterated. How can you forget that you're an elite of the dynasty and a loyal general that the Emperor of the Ruins of Immortality values? Tianmu, remember that your name is Tianmu. You're a member of the Sky River family and the first Star Fleet captain after Sky Palace was established. Seeing that, Sky River Star-Lord's eyes turned red. He was shocked and furious. He pointed at Tianmu and shouted, Tianmu, is my name Tianmu? Tianmu was killing crazily, but he didn't show any emotion. He was like a killing machine, ruthless, precise and ruthless. He used the least amount of Dharma power and paid the smallest price to kill his target in the most painful way. However, when he heard that name, he trembled and froze. Holding the blood-stained long sword, he lowered his head and said, Is that my name? Tianmu? He seemed to have recalled something. Tears rolled down his cheeks with streaks of blood, but he smiled miserably and murmured, I remember now. I once went on an expedition to Middle Saturn with honor, trust, and hope to find a place for my people to live. He started to tremble as if he was struck by a great fear. I thought that even though it was a planet of life, it had been abandoned without any orthodoxy or power. I thought it would be easy for me to take it down. I could make a name for myself and become a marquis. He even seemed to have recovered. There were more whites in his eyes and his voice was still trembling. I didn't expect Earth to be so different from before. Our expedition army was ambushed by a deity-grade soul formation cultivator. That's terrifying. We were humiliated and captured. But Star-Lord Tianhe was not interested in listening. He impatiently shouted, Tianmu, you unfilial son. Quickly order your subordinates to stop the slaughter. You killed your own king. You can't be forgiven. The white in Tianmu Divine General's eyes suddenly disappeared, turning completely black. He slashed with his blade, I am the #1 corpse general under Kong Teichu. I will not be humiliated. Tila. Sparkling divine blood dyed the sky red. Tianmu godly general was too strong. Heavenly River Star King couldn't resist at all and was cut to pieces. Even his divine treasure was destroyed and disappeared from the world. At this point, with the fall of the Heavenly River Star Lord, one of the 3 giants of the Ruins of Immortality was none other than Mo Li. From the beginning to the end, Jiang Tian was calm, like an ancient well without ripples, watching coldly. It seemed that everything was within his expectations, as if he had the pearl of wisdom in his hand. At this moment, a smile gradually appeared on his face. He looked at the rising sun city and said softly, Little girl, I really didn't expect you to. What are you waiting for? Do you want me to beg you to come out? I've become ugly. I'm afraid you'll dislike me, so I don't dare to go out immediately. Let me use my creation divine power. A soft and pleasant voice rang out. It sounded like the chirping of an oriole. It was playful and carried a hint of tenderness and sweetness. Silly girl, even if you become an old woman, you're the most beautiful in my eyes. Jiang Tian helplessly shook his head. They were an old couple. Why did they have to talk so much? Well, Jiang Tian, you're capable, aren't you? You've taken in a few beautiful female disciples and swept through the ruins of immortality. Now that you have status and identity, you don't put your wife in your heart and curse me to become an old woman? Zhao Xueqing's voice was sweet and coquettish. Hey, why do you only listen to unpleasant words? You're good at finding fault. Didn't you hear the second half of the sentence? Jiang Tian helplessly said. See if I don't clean you up. With a soft snort under Jiang Tian's infinitely expectant gaze. A woman wearing a purple crystal armor and a phoenix feather golden crown, carrying a long knife, walked out with a confident and steady pace. The girl's shoulder-length black hair was tied with a headband woven from the skin of a flood dragon and inlaid with a soul-setting stone to bind her hair. She had a delicate and pretty little face with exquisite facial features, as if all the spiritual energy in the world had gathered here. Her skin was more delicate than a girl's, but with a maturity, grace, and confidence. That confidence must have been cultivated by going through storms and being in a high position. Her beautiful eyes were as bright and clear as gems, containing gentleness, kindness, and compassion, but also incomparably firm and resolute. She had been through a lot, but her heart hadn't changed. There was a sweet smile at the corner of her plump lips. That smile was affectionate, sentimental, and also doting, as if she were a big sister doting on her little brother. Facing Zhang Tian, there was only one person in the world who could show such a smile in the world: Zhou Xian. At this moment, the cultivators and mortals in the ruins of immortality all exclaimed in their hearts when they saw that smile and that smiling woman. How could there be such a beautiful smile and such a stunning woman in this world? She was like a goddess, eternally indestructible, invincible, and fearless, a goddess raised by heaven and earth. Any woman would feel a sense of inferiority the moment they saw her. Even though Fairy Jade Lotus by Wuxia Longxingnan and the other girls were all famous in this world, when compared to her, it was like a chicken meeting a phoenix or a wildflower meeting a peony by the roadside. They paled in comparison and lost their splendor. She's a soul formation cultivator. And she's of an extremely high grade, far surpassing the sword god of the ruins Emperor's palace. Any cultivator, even Song Ming, would feel a sense of fear when they saw her, and all their fighting spirit would disappear. The fierce battle continued. Zhang Tian and Zhao Xueqing walked towards each other as if there was no one else around. There was only each other in their eyes, as if the battle was close at hand. Even the entire vast ruins of immortality and the dazzling universe suddenly disappeared. There was no other person in the world, only each other. Gods exploded one after another, letting out an earth-shattering boom, as if they were setting off fireworks for the reunion of the husband and wife. Under the dim starry sky, beams of destructive light lit up. Those were the flames of golden cores being crushed and exploded, as if they were setting off fireworks for their reunion. "Hubby, you've worked hard." Zhao Xueqing walked to Zhang Tian and looked up at him. She smiled, but she could not hold back her tears. They rolled down her jade-white cheeks. There was a scar on the left side of her forehead. It was the size of a crescent moon. It was probably left during the battle, but there were fragments of the great path of the soul formation cultivators left behind. Her magic power circulated endlessly, so the wound could not heal. "The world is peaceful. You and the child are safe. It's worth it." Zhang Tian stretched his arms and hugged the girl's soft body. He closed his eyes slightly, feeling extremely tired and wanting to sleep. The girl's fresh and natural scent reached his nose. It was like lavender and daisies. It was so familiar that Zhang Tian had been dreaming about it for years. "The battle is over. If you want to sleep, then sleep for a while." Zhao Xueqing patted Zhang Tian's shoulder gently, like a sister taking care of a tired brother. In fact, she was a few years younger than Zhang Tian. At this moment, interstellar flying shuttles and spaceships soared into the sky like fireworks, leaving colorful trails in the sky that was already pale blue and faintly illuminated by the sunlight. Those were the exhaust flames left by the crystal reactor. The great defeat began. Nobody resisted. Nobody wanted to kill Zhang Tian anymore. They could only run. In less than half an hour, the great changes in the sky above the ruins of immortality had spread across the entire ruins of immortality. The crystal warships that were prepared to fight Zhang Tian to the death all changed their coordinates and sailed toward the depths of the universe. At that moment, in the launch bases of the Heavenly Palace all over the ruins of immortality, thousands of ships set off and hundreds of barges raced toward the depths of the universe. Many spaceships were not equipped for interstellar travel at all. They did not have enough crystal energy and their reactor was too low-end. This meant that after they ran out of energy, they could only rely on inertia to move toward their target at a constant and relatively slow speed. The time it would take to reach their target could be tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years. If the god of luck did not come, they were bound to die in the desolate universe when they were still a long distance away from their target. But they had no choice and they did not hesitate in the slightest. Overlord of the Wood Spirit Civilization, Emperor of the Absolute Sky Ruins, please bless your descendants for a smooth voyage. No space storms, no space beasts, and safe arrival at their new home. A captain knelt on the ground, his forehead touching the ground, his arms stretched out, his eyes filled with tears as he prayed loudly. Our homeland is just the last stop of our ancestors' wanderings. Today we will continue to wander in the footsteps of our ancestors. Perhaps, Wandering is the destiny of us descendants of the wood spirits. A cultivator kissed the land of the ruins of immortality, then stood up resolutely and walked into the spaceship. Kangtechu, you devil. We will take revenge for today's grudge in the future. We will take back the ruins of immortality and invade your ancestral planet, Earth. We will kill everyone and leave no one alive. Kangtechu, you are bloodthirsty and unscrupulous. You will be punished by the heavens in the future. There were also cultivators who gritted their teeth and cursed and swore with bloodshot eyes. Father, mother, I can't take you away, but don't worry, we will avenge you. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. There were even cultivators who were moved and wailed. Song Ming smiled as he watched the spaceships take off. Then his expression suddenly changed. He knelt on the ground like an old dog and kept kowtowing. He begged with tears in his eyes, Taichu Emperor, we are convinced, completely convinced. I, Song Ming, am willing to lead all the people of the ruins of immortality to be slaves and servants to Taichu Emperor. We will be loyal to Taichu Emperor for generations to come. We will never betray him. Chapter 1666. Shut up. You're so annoying. Jiang Tian frowned. This old dog dared to disturb him while he was being intimate with his wife. Mistress, you're kind and magnanimous. The dynasty is guilty, but the common people are innocent. As long as you can leave some roots for the wood spirit civilization, we're all willing to commit suicide to atone for our sins. Song Ming begged with tears in his eyes. This person was really ruthless. As long as they could protect the roots of the ruins of immortality, they were willing to give up the entire ruins of immortality. They didn't even want to occupy the level 2 and level 3 worlds below the ruins of immortality. We'll talk about whether to kill the people of the ruins of immortality. We still need to listen to my husband's opinion. But none of these cultivators who want to escape to the outer realm can be left alive. Zhou Xian chuckled. Many space battleships chased after them and attacked with their Dharma artifacts. Streaks of dazzling flames lit up the sky. In an instant, the launch sites of Sky Palace were engulfed in a sea of fire. The space battleships of Sky Palace that hadn't broken through the space barrier and left the gravitational field of the ruins of immortality were all turned into iron rain. No. At this moment, Song Ming's heart was filled with grief. The spaceships like Rising Sun and Essence Conservator had obviously been modified. They were 10 times or 100 times faster than before. The Dharma artifacts they were equipped with were also extremely powerful. They were far more powerful than the spaceships of Sky Palace. Under the attack, none of the spaceships of Sky Palace escaped. They were all destroyed. As for the cultivators on them, they also fell like rain. None of them escaped. They were all blown to ashes. After a while, Jiang Tian held Zhou Xian's hand and looked at Song Ming coldly. He said, Song Ming, you probably think that Earth is an abandoned planet that has entered the age of chaos. We're poor and weak and can't withstand a single blow. Actually, that's not the case. A few years ago, I've already revived Earth's spirit chi and spread the cultivation methods to establish a foundation for the future. You're just digging your own grave by invading. You're just throwing eggs at a rock. Jiang Tian had just communicated with Zhou Xian with his mind. He already knew everything that had happened after he left Earth. The recovery of spiritual power was not something that happened overnight. Instead, it could last for years or even decades. During this period of time, the spirit chi contained within planet destruction was constantly gushing out and being released. Earth's volume was constantly expanding, and all sorts of mountain ranges rose and rose. The Earth expanded and new mountain ranges, lakes and oceans were even born. In the first year after Jiang Tian left, the entire Earth had expanded to 10 times its original size. The geological changes were intense and the weather was chaotic. This was the first great change since ancient times. Earthquakes and tsunamis erupted almost every day. However, human abilities were rapidly evolving. Ordinary people were as strong as a mountain and could leap as if they were flying. In an instant they could soar 10 meters into the air. Therefore, their ability to deal with disasters increased rapidly, and there were not many casualties. Even if some people were injured in the disaster, as long as they didn't die, they would be nourished by the spirit spring and recover quickly, even becoming stronger. In addition, there were also some ancient ruins which contained great fortune and mysterious inheritances. Many cultivators on Earth boldly ventured into these ruins to explore. They obtained many benefits and improved rapidly. Some of the secret realms hidden in the dimensional space appeared. Some were sects, some were aristocratic families. They all opened their doors and accepted new disciples. The overlords of the secret realms would also descend to the mortal world and conduct exchanges in all aspects. In addition, Tianqing School had announced a lot of cultivation arts. Cultivation was flourishing and cultivators were popping up like bamboo shoots after a rain. Within a year, nascent soul cultivators had appeared. As for golden core cultivators, there were countless of them. As for Zhou Xian, because she had inherited more than half of the spirit chi of planet destruction in her body, her stainless phoenix deity body had been fully activated and the cultivation arts taught by Jiang Tian, her power had increased rapidly. Within a year she had broken through two major barriers, the golden core level and the nascent soul level, and stepped into the first level of the soul formation level. Human technology also made rapid progress. After learning about the existence of the cultivation civilization, the existence of the dimensional world and the threat of the ruins of deities, human technology unleashed unprecedented potential and reached the limit. Of course, this was also because the humans and monsters on Earth kept evolving and increasing their strength, which made the governments of various countries and large multinational giants worried that the world order would be disrupted and the political, economic and military systems would collapse, so they crazily increased their investment in technology. In any case, the great pressure gave the human civilization a new lease of life. The Mars Space City was successfully built back then and military stations, fortresses and observation points were built on all the planets in the solar system. After that, technologies such as controllable nuclear fusion technology, space curvature engines, memory transplants and sublight speed spacecraft were also developed in 2 years. In short, with the promotion of various factors, humans on Earth had entered a new civilization form that focused on both cultivation and technology. Several dimensional worlds in the solar system such as Tianqing, Chi'er and Kanglin also surrendered to Jiang Tian and joined the Myth Alliance. They also removed the dimensional seal and entered the space of the same dimension, revealing a planet with life. In the end, they formed a barrier to protect Earth against possible invasions from other planets. About 2 years ago, the Myth Alliance detected that Tianmu led hundreds of spaceships into the solar system and landed on Mars. Keynes did not dare to delay and immediately reported the situation to Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian led many students of Tianqing School and members of the Myth Alliance to stop Tianmu and the others on Mars. After a fierce battle and paying a huge price, they finally annihilated and captured all the invaders. When Jiang Tian left Earth, he left a soul-swallowing seed for Zhou Xian and taught her how to refine it. 2 years ago, Zhou Xian was already as powerful as Jiang Tian and the soul-swallowing seed was also very powerful. At least she had no problem controlling Tianmu and the others. So she used the soul-swallowing seed to refine Tianmu and the others into her own corpse generals. After learning about the crisis in the ruins of immortality from Tianmu, Zhou Xian was very worried about Jiang Tian's safety. After all, when Jiang Tian left Earth, he was only a golden core cultivator and there were hundreds of soul formation cultivators in the ruins of immortality alone. There were also countless nascent soul cultivators and golden core cultivators. Besides, there were dozens of inferior worlds in the ruins of immortality and each of them had a heavenly sect family. If Jiang Tian went in alone with only a few nascent soul cultivators such as True Dragon and Old Monster Mingi, it would be like an ant trying to shake a tree. How could Zhou Xian rest assured? She was determined to help Jiang Tian, so she took Tianmu and the other corpse generals to the Red Field world on the unsetting sun and other ships. She contacted Ding Lai, Ding Lingdang and the others and teleported her, the warships and the corpse generals to the Dragon Gate world through the spatial teleportation formation. They sailed directly from the Dragon Gate to the ruins of immortality without using the dimensional teleport arrays. Even though using the dimensional teleport arrays was fast, there were also many disadvantages. The landing place was fixed and they were basically waiting to be killed. The spaceships like the Rising Sun had been modified by Zhang Qinzhen, the king of artifact refining. Their performance had been improved 100 times. There were a few hundred astronomical units between the Dragon Gate and the ruins of immortality, which was like crossing several solar systems. However, they arrived in only a few hours with the Rising Sun. Kong Teichu, please give us a way out. Don't kill the descendants of the wood spirits and their race. Zhu Tian, the first emperor of the ruins of immortality, left 1,000 years ago and arrived at the central galaxy. I'm afraid he'll get great inheritances and opportunities. If he returns and sees your majesty treating his people well, he'll be very grateful. Song Ming begged like an old dog wagging its tail. His silver hair trembled slightly as if his vitality had been sucked away. He used to be a peerless genius and was famous in 3 eras. Naturally, he was arrogant and looked down on everyone. But then he gave up all his dignity and begged for mercy for the sake of his descendants. Are you threatening me? Jiang Tian's eyes turned cold. Ancestral patriarch Song Ming seemed to be begging, but he had actually revealed an important piece of information to Jiang Tian. The first emperor of the ruins of immortality, Zhou Xian, was no longer in this world. He had gone to the central galaxy. It was very likely that they would make a comeback and exact bloody revenge. And yet Jiang Tian wasn't afraid at all. Judging by the level of spirit qi in this world, it was impossible to nurture a void-returning saint. The old ruins emperor Zhou Xian should only be a soul formation cultivator. Besides, he had lived for 10,000 years. Considering the power of a soul formation cultivator, he should have been buried up to his neck. If he wasn't at his peak, why would Jiang Tian be afraid of him? Furthermore, as long as he arrived at the central galaxy, that would be his home ground. There was practically nothing that he did not know, and there was nothing that he did not know. Just like how a fish could swim freely in the vast sea and a bird could fly freely in the vast sky, he would have the home ground advantage. That's not what I meant. I'm just analyzing the pros and cons for your majesty, Song Ming quickly said. You have no right to comment on how I deal with the descendants of the wood spirit planet. Those grudges and grievances will naturally be settled with all of you. Jiang Tian waved his hand. With a snap, the law of chaos turned into a finger aura and shot into the sky. Kong Teichu, don't make a mistake. After Song Ming made his last threat, Jiang Tian's chaotic finger aura had already pierced through his divine treasures, and even his divine soul. Song Ming, the divine general who had been the master of the old ruins emperor for 3 generations, had died just like that. At that moment, the entire ruins of immortality went silent. Chapter 1667. Could be said that Song Ming was the biggest trump card of the ruins of deity. Once he died, almost any cultivator in the ruins of deity who could fight against Jiang Tian would be killed instantly. Besides, the dozens of soul formation cultivators and thousands of nascent soul cultivators guarding the ruins of deity city had also died in the battle. Only golden core cultivators were left. As for golden core cultivators, trying to defeat Jiang Tian was like an ant trying to shake a tree or an egg hitting a rock. It was unrealistic. Jiang Tian was terrifying, but what was more terrifying was the arrival of Zhou Xian, who had reached the soul formation level and controlled Tianmu and many other divine generals. That was too terrifying. It could be said that Jiang Tian was fully capable of slaughtering everyone in the ruins of deity, including the descendants of the wood spirits and the common people. The ruins of deity have changed. We've become slaves. Old ruins emperor, where have you been? Why didn't you come back? Can't you see that the country you fought for has been taken over by shameless bandits? The hearts of billions of people were filled with sorrow. Some of them had already fallen to the ground and started wailing. Some of them gnashed their teeth and stared at Jiang Tian with hatred. That was a great sorrow. They used to be high and mighty and were treated as deities and gods by the lower worlds. But now they were beaten to the ground and would become sinners, refugees, captives and slaves. They might even lose their lives. A speck of dust in this era was like a mountain when it fell on top of people's heads. Change was a simple word, but it meant the collapse and reconstruction of the social order. Those with power would be cruelly eliminated and countless families would be destroyed. Could even be said that if Jiang Tian was ruthless enough, it was possible for him to wipe out the entire wood spirit race. You want to be a slave? That's wishful thinking. Kong Teichu is narrow-minded and vengeful. He's vicious and sees human lives as worthless. And our expeditionary army had once invaded the Central Plains. Why would he let us go? He'll definitely take revenge. A wise old man let out a maniacal laugh. Suddenly he put a sword to his neck and blood splattered everywhere. He committed suicide in despair. Kong Teichu, I'd rather die than be your subject. You are also not fit to be the master of the ruins of immortality. Many of the loyal officials of the ruins of immortality chose to commit suicide, burning themselves in despair. They sang the war songs of the ruins of immortality as their own funeral songs, filled with boundless decisiveness and ruthlessness. At this moment, above the ruins of immortality, the earth was singing a sad song and the sky was weeping. Heaven and man were connected and the clouds of gloom were gloomy. It brought about bitter winds, bitter rain, and 10,000 bolts of lightning. It could be said that the ruins of Immortality Imperial Court wasn't rotten at all. Their ability to mobilize troops was top-notch, and their leadership was also appropriate. In particular, the loyalty of their subjects was comparable to that of some of the immortal regimes in the Central Galaxy. It was as if they had established a spiritual contract. Their citizens were fearless and brave. If not for the resistance of Jiang Tian and Zhou Xian, the solar system might have already fallen. Strange. Could it be that in his previous life, the Southern Gate 2 stars did not succeed in their invasion? Or did they leave after the invasion? At this time, Jiang Tian suddenly had a suspicious thought in his mind. In his previous life, Jiang Tian returned to Earth after he reached the divinity transformation stage. At that time, Earth had completely entered the Age of Doom. It was like a dead planet and its technology was advanced. The people were living and working in peace. There was no sign of the invasion of the Southern Gate 2 stars. However, the thought just flashed in his mind. He didn't have time to think about it, because there were still a lot of things to deal with at the moment. When Yun Zhongzi, Tu Fei, the Green Dragon King, the Fu brothers Niu Duotian by Wuxia, Long Xingnan, and the rest of them arrived at the sky of the capital of ruins from the Sea of Fallen Immortal on a crystal warship, they saw the shocking scene. They were all dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. Who is this woman? Why is she so beautiful? Seeing Zhao Xueqing and Jiang Tian standing hand in hand, a complicated expression appeared on Long Xingnan's beautiful face. Her heart was slightly tightened. This woman has an extraordinary aura, as if she's a goddess who has descended to the mortal world. Although she treats people peacefully, she's high and mighty and I can't compare to her. Bai Mushua's pupils shrank. She looked at Zhao Xueqing carefully and felt a sense of inferiority. Could it be? Could it be? She must be Senior Absolute Beginning's wife. Niu Duotian suddenly understood something. Because Jiang Tian had always been clean and even cold, he always kept a distance from his female disciples and subordinates. He had never hugged or held hands like this before. The only person who could be so intimate with Jiang Tian was his wife. If its mistress, why did Tianmu's corpse generals and long-distance warships listen to her command and attack the warships of Sky Palace? Tu Fei was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. Did Mistress suppress and intimidate Tianmu and the others on Middle Saturn? Fu Heishui couldn't finish his sentence, because even he didn't believe this speculation. In the records of the ancient books, in the words of the ancestors, and even in Jiang Tian's own narration, the blue planet, which used to be called Middle Saturn and was now called Earth, had withered spirit chi or even dried up. There was no cultivation civilization and humans were weak and backward. How could such a desperate counterattack happen? The moment they saw Tsang Ming killed by Jiang Tian, the entire ruins of immortality fell into a dead silence. The cultivators and mortals of the ruins of immortality couldn't say a word. No one had expected such an ending. Jiang Tian had crossed the 6 lines of defense and arrived at the ruins of immortality. He had defeated the academy, killed all the divine kings and even killed the overlord's spirit. It was like watching a mantis overturn a chariot with their own eyes. When the expedition fleet returned, they still had a glimmer of hope. But unexpectedly, Tianmu had become Zhao Xueqing's corpse general, and the fleet had become Jiang Tian's assistant. Now the returning fleet had destroyed all the ships of the Heavenly Palace and Jiang Tian had instructed them to kill Tsang Ming. All the cultivators and mortals were in extreme despair. They didn't want to accept this reality but they had to, because they had used up all their trump cards. From the beginning, the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality had planned to kill Jiang Tian at all costs, even if they had to die together with him. They wanted to win space for the expedition army. Until now, all the soul formation cultivators in the ruins of immortality had been killed and there weren't many nascent soul cultivators left. And Jiang Tian still had the trump card in his hand. I'm afraid the ruins of immortality is going to change. Kang Teichu has really won. At that moment, on the ruins of immortality, from the cultivators, nobles and officials, to the peddlers, all had the same thought in their minds and their hearts were filled with sorrow. In the Tianji Grotto heaven, many cultivators gathered in the meeting hall. Under the light screen, they were motionless like clay statues with complicated expressions. Suddenly, an acting elder who was a nascent soul cultivator showed grief and indignation. He raised his arm and shouted, "Kong Teichu is just an abandoned ant. He's not even a native of the deity ground. How can he be the master of the ruins of immortality? He slaughtered millions of people, destroyed the dynasty, and set off a storm of blood. We, the people of the dynasty, naturally have to fight for the dynasty. Elder Qi, we've long hated the tyranny of the ruins of immortality. We're willing to support and submit to Kong Teichu. You've gone against the tide and made an enemy of the heavenly emperor. Don't blame us for being ruthless." Suddenly, the acting elder of the Tianji Grotto Heaven stepped forward and shouted at the elder. "We're willing to support His Majesty Tai Chu and build a new heavenly court. Elder Qi, you're a wolf with wild ambitions. You're unforgivable. Kill him." The surrounding cultivators all attacked Elder Qi at the same time. In the blink of an eye, Elder Qi was sliced into 8 pieces. Even his physical body, nascent soul, and divine soul were destroyed. Before he died, his face was still full of shock and hatred. He had never thought that his fellow sect members who hated Jiang Tian to the core would suddenly turn against him and attack him. And they were too ruthless. They didn't give him a way out at all. "Make an announcement immediately. The Tianji Grotto Heaven supports His Majesty Tai Chu and is willing to pledge allegiance to the new heavenly court." The acting sect master of the Grotto Heaven announced with deep fear in his eyes. The situation had taken a turn for the worse. Jiang Tian had completely taken the upper hand. He was a divine transformation realm cultivator who had swept through thousands of miles and destroyed the ruins of immortality. Now his woman had returned with dozens of divine transformation realm corpse generals. Adding that to the forces of the lower realm that he controlled, anyone who dared to resist would be killed within a day. The acting sect master of the Tianji Grotto Heaven was a nascent soul cultivator in the first place. He was forced to take on a dangerous task and couldn't take on a heavy responsibility at all. Just hearing the name Kong Teichu frightened him. Chapter 1668. The Guardian Family, the Jiang family. Just like Zhao Tulong, the patriarch of the Sea Protector families, the patriarch of the 8 Guardian families, had participated in the battle to kill Jiang Tian and died in the battle. Many nascent soul cultivators had also died. There were only a few people left in the Jiang family. The strongest one was only a golden core cultivator. Other than Uncle Jiu, who was the leader, the rest were just some young disciples. "Uncle Jiu, what should we do? Should we run?" The disciples were so scared that their faces were paler than a corpse that had been dead for 3 days. Their legs trembled and they were about to cry. They had been the happiest when Jiang Tian was fighting, telling everyone that Jiang Tian would lose and cheering for the empire of the ruins of immortality. Other than the royal family of the ruins of immortality, Sky Palace, the ruins Emperor's Palace, and the Academy, the other forces that Jiang Tian had to kill were the 6 Grotto Heavens and the 8 Guardian families. The Guardian families, like Zhao Tulong's family, had been the most active during the battle against De Ko, the battle in the Xiantian mountain range, and the battle against Jiang Tian. And given Jiang Tian's vengeful personality, he would never let the Jiang family go. He would even exterminate the entire family. At this moment, they no longer hated Jiang Tian in their hearts. It was replaced by deep fear. "Can you run?" 9th great uncle's withered face revealed a trace of sorrow. Everyone was silent, unable to say anything in response. With Jiang Tian's ability, it would be easy for him to find them. Even if they crawled to the ends of the earth, as long as Jiang Tian wanted to find them, he would be able to find them no matter where they went. However, there were some young people with weaker temperaments who were already sobbing softly. "Is our 1,000-year-old guardian family going to be wiped out today?" Uncle Jiu stood up and said, "I remember that 13th brother has the bloodline of the deity land." "Granduncle, what do you mean?" Everyone already had some understanding in their hearts. "That's right. Only if 13th brother becomes the head of our family will our family have a chance to survive." 9th great uncle said decisively. "Sai, that's the only way." Everyone was speechless. Immediately, the 13th brother was invited over and was publicly elected as the patriarch. This caused the 13th brother's expression to be filled with bewilderment, restlessness, and uneasiness. This is what it means when a man achieves the Tao. Even his chickens and dogs ascend to the heavens. When they saw this scene, all the direct descendants had complicated feelings in their hearts, and they sighed endlessly with emotion. 13th brother was originally the son of a drunken patriarch and a servant girl who had the bloodline of the celestial land. Everyone despised him to the extreme. His abilities were ordinary and he couldn't cultivate. Even his father hated him. In the clan their status was extremely low, even lower than that of a servant, and they could be bullied and humiliated by anyone. However, just because Kong Teichu had ascended to the pinnacle, the ruins of immortality would be under the control of the new heavenly court in the future. In order to ease the conflict with Kong Teichu, he could only push the 13th brother out to be the family head. After all, if Jiang Tian knew that the patriarch of this family had the bloodline of the celestial land, he might have let him off. As for the other disciples, even if they were extremely talented and had made great contributions before, they could only be the 13th brother's underlings and disappear into the crowd. In fact, not only the Tianji Grotto Heaven and the Guardian families. Every Grotto Heaven, sect, province, city and family was shocked by this battle, and they were all terrified by the name of Kong Teichu. Many nobles and members of the royal family were scared out of their wits, fearing that Jiang Tian would eliminate them. They immediately announced that they would draw a clear line with the ruins of Immortality Dynasty and swear allegiance to His Majesty Tai Chu and the new heavenly court. However, some of them knew that they would definitely be punished, so they directly chose to commit suicide. For example, Lord Jade Lion, who had led an army to the mortal world and almost destroyed the Dragon Gate world, chose to kill himself by exploding his nascent soul after killing his entire family. According to rough statistics, more than 300 families and sects committed suicide 2 hours after the Battle of the Ruins capital, and more than 30,000 people died. Of course, some of them weren't trying to avoid harm, but were loyal to the ruins of immortality. They couldn't accept such a failure at all, so they committed suicide to show their loyalty. This was especially so for those sects and clans that had grudges with Jiang Tian during the battle. They were so scared that their hearts almost exploded. After declaring their loyalty, they prepared congratulatory gifts and wanted to pay respects to Jiang Tian. Some even brought heavenly princesses, sect ladies or beautiful disciples with excellent roots who could be used as cultivation furnaces. Their intentions were self-evident. The impact of this battle had already spread to many level 2 and level 3 worlds. At this moment, the Dragon Gate, the North Sea, Penglai and the Yingzhou world were instantly stirred. Countless descendants of the deity land cried. Especially the descendants of the true dragon dynasty like Ao Feng. They had already known the truth of history and had been waiting for this day for thousands of years. It could be said that the descendants of the deity land had never been treated equally in the 10,000 years since the heavenly court of the previous dynasty was defeated. The ancient sages had died and the ruins of immortality was established. They were exiled to the lower worlds and barren worlds. Even in the inferior worlds they still weren't masters. The ruins of immortality would send envoys there who were like emperors. Even an emperor in the human world would be killed if he offended them. Ordinary people were like the lowest level servants. What was even more chilling was that after the universe chi drawing array was built in the ruins of immortality, the inferior worlds became the spirit chi of the ruins of immortality and their spirit chi kept declining. Even cultivators turned into blood and energy and were absorbed by the array in the universe. Under the rule of the ruins of immortality, the divine emperors changed and their policies were different, forming several dynasties with different styles. But in conclusion, for the descendants of the deity land, there were only 2 dynasties. A dynasty where they were slaves. An era where they couldn't be slaves even if they wanted to. The ruins of immortality was too powerful. Many low-level cultivators and ordinary people didn't know about its history at all. Even if Ao Feng and the others knew, they wouldn't dare to provoke them. They could only pretend to be obedient and delay the envoys of the ruins of immortality, hiding the existence of the portal so that they wouldn't attack Earth. In order to escape from the ruins of immortality, Ao Feng even hid in the Thunder Lock world. In essence, they were still no match for the ruins of immortality, not even their envoys. Even though Jiang Tian had risen, they had never thought that he would be able to wash away the grievances of the past and rewrite history so quickly. Therefore, when the news came, it made them feel like they were dreaming. It felt unreal and they couldn't believe it. From this, one could imagine how excited they were. Senior Taichu 1. Does this mean that we can enter the ruins of immortality at will in the future without having to go through the selection of the 100 Moons Academy? Ao Jiao pulled Ao Feng's sleeve and asked. Of course, this world has returned to the hands of the descendants of the deity land. It originally belonged to us, so of course we can enter at will. Ao Feng smiled kindly, but unknowingly his eyes turned red. Did you see that? Evil can't prevail over good. There's still justice in this world. The Taichu Heavenly Emperor killed the descendants of the Ruins Emperor and overturned the Ruins of Immortality to avenge you. His son Aobo and many of his descendants had died in the hands of the Ruins of Immortality. Now they had finally gotten their revenge. The rock that pressed down on his heart was suddenly removed, and the feeling of humiliation, resentment, and oppression vanished abruptly. In his entire life he'd never felt so happy, relaxed, and comfortable as he did today. Hurry up. Go to the ancestral temple and tell your father and the ancestors of the true dragon dynasty about this. Recollecting his emotions, Ao Feng wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes and instructed Ao Jiao. When the ancestral worship ceremony was held and the news was spread, the blood feud of the true dragons is finally avenged today. Ancestors, the descendants of the deity land will finally take back everything that belongs to us. At this moment, countless descendants of the deity land cried at the same time. They cried tears of joy. If we take over the Ruins of Immortality, we'll be able to find the teleport array to the central galaxy and conquer the universe, right? Bai Zhe rubbed his hands excitedly. What a pity. I heard that master killed 1,000,000 golden core and nascent soul cultivators and 100 soul formation cultivators. But I didn't get to eat any of them. The black dog complained. We won. The Taichu Heavenly Emperor won. The Heavenly Emperor is invincible. Patriarch Mingyi, Qijui and his daughter, Sword Master Ao Tian and his disciples were all laughing as if a heavy burden had been lifted. However, they immediately gathered in the world of the Dragon Gate to discuss their next move. The teleport array between the Ruins of Immortality and the Hylon continent can be opened now. Sword Master Ao Tian stroked his beard and smiled confidently. That was true. The Ruins of Immortality had already surrendered. It was time for them to go against the heavens. At this moment Sword Master Ao Tian could be said to be proud. Long Xingnan had used Ao Jiao as bait to hold an auction on the 18 islands and secretly set up an ambush to kill Jiang Tian. That battle was the first time he had clashed with Jiang Tian. The other nascent soul cultivators were forced to fight Jiang Tian because of the power of the Dragon Gate and Long Xingnan. Only Sword Master Ao Tian was the most cunning. After a few moves he was willing to admit defeat and run away, expressing his submission. When the news spread, many cultivators in the Penglai world laughed at him, saying that he was a weakling and had no courage. Now he couldn't help but feel proud. Look, what did I do? This is a heavenly emperor. In the future I'll also be a heavenly general of the heavenly court. The Ruins of Immortality has just been established. It's time for us to choose outstanding cultivators and rush to the Ruins of Immortality. We'll stand guard for the heavenly emperor and protect the country. Qijui smiled, unable to hide the crazy smile in his eyes. This time he had really made the right bet. To stand guard for the heavenly emperor and protect the country, he would be a high-ranking official. Not to mention becoming a provincial governor in the Ruins of Immortality, he could at least be the realm master of a second-grade world. It was simply a step to the sky, a chicken flying to the branch to become a phoenix. Chapter 1669. It wasn't just the Dragon Gate, Northern Sea, Yingzhou and the other third-grade worlds. Even the second-grade worlds like Hylon and Fertile Lands were stirred. The tremors were even more intense than the third-grade worlds. The factions of the second-grade worlds had very ambiguous attitudes. For example, the Desolate Desert and the Untamed Wilderness world had a neutral attitude and did not help either side. Of course, when the Ruins Emperor's palace ordered them to send troops to the Ruins of Immortality to attack Jiang Tian, or the Dragon Gate and other worlds that Jiang Tian occupied, they did not disobey the order but could do nothing. The Untamed Wilderness world. From the perspective of the universe, this star looked like a green sphere covered in moss. There wasn't much ocean and 90% of it was primordial forests. The vegetation was abnormally lush as vines snaked through the void like dragons. The trees were so thick that it would take dozens of people to wrap their arms around them. Many living beings used the trees to build nests and houses. Dinosaurs, cheilants, saber-toothed tigers, mammoths, pterosaurs, and all sorts of rare prehistoric animals roared and ran. There were also ferocious birds that spread their wings 100 meters long. They swooped down and disappeared into the forest. When they charged out again, their steel-like claws had an additional 100-meter-long python that was as thick as a water bucket. It was struggling incessantly. It was filled with a primitive and untamed aura. A third of the cultivators here were spirits formed from trees and vegetation. They were a type of demonic cultivator. A third of them had human bloodlines, but they mainly cultivated wood elemental cultivation techniques. The other third were all kinds of demonic cultivators. Most of them had beast bloodlines. They were still extremely powerful and struck fear in many of the lower-grade worlds. Martial Sifting Sect. It was one of the strongest sects in the untamed wilderness world. 3 patriarchs sat cross-legged as emerald green leaves flew up and down like a lake of flowers. They arranged themselves into a line of letters that appeared in the void. The 3 patriarchs only read one sentence before their pupils constricted. Their haggard faces turned solemn. "Sigh, junior brothers, how do you feel?" An old cultivator with a face full of wrinkles, sparse silver hair, and a body as thin as a dried twig glanced at the other 2 patriarchs and said softly. His eyes were deep and bright, revealing wisps of green light, and he was sitting at the head of the table. "Senior brother, to be honest, I'm very surprised." He never expected that the ruins of Immortality Empire that the ruins Emperor's lineage had painstakingly built for 10,000 years would be destroyed overnight. Moreover, he was killed by a cultivator from a wasteland planet. The cultivator who was sitting in the second seat had his thick silver hair tied into a bun with a bamboo-shaped jade hairpin inserted into it. He was wearing a robe embroidered with various plant patterns and flower patterns. His eyes were filled with shock as he said with deep emotion, "I agree with one theory. This Kong Teichu is not a pure native of Planet East. It's very likely that he's the reincarnation of a legendary cultivator from the Central Galaxy. Otherwise, how could he be defeated by the sword god of the ruins Emperor's Palace, who came from the Big Dipper constellation and nurtured a supreme soul formation cultivator? Then eldest senior brother, second senior brother, what should we do?" The white-haired middle-aged man sitting at the bottom revealed a look of fear. 3 years ago, the sect master of the Saint Era Sword sect in the Big Dipper Star region, Luo Chen, came to our world and took away 4th junior brother and the others. He said that he was going to the Central Plains to fight for the opportunity to become an immortal. That was Kong Teichu's homeland, the ancestral planet. I'm afraid that Kong Teichu is even more ruthless than the ruins of Immortality Empire. He'll start a new round of tyranny. After all, the ruins of Immortality is facing an apocalyptic crisis. He'll definitely use all his resources to increase his cultivation level to solve the crisis. The second senior brother's expression changed drastically at the mention of that. His pupils contracted as he looked at the eldest senior brother sitting at the top. The Sacred Era Sword sect was the sect where the sword god of the ruins Emperor's Palace had been. However, he had lost to Luo Chen in the fight for the Zhongzi position, so he had fled far away and set up a foothold in the ruins of Immortality, accumulating the capital to make a comeback. However, it was said that the sword god of the ruins Emperor's Palace was more than a star and half a day away from Luo Chen. It was said that the sword god was not even ranked on the galaxy list, but Luo Chen was famous on the galaxy list and was even at the top. The Sacred Era Sword sect's expedition to Planet East might be 2,000 years later than the ruins of Immortality, but they would arrive on Planet East within a year. That was because they were too fast. The Big Dipper constellation was about 120 light-years away from the solar system, which was similar to the ruins of Immortality. That was because the solar system and the South Gate galaxy were neighboring galaxies, only 4 light-years away from each other. In the vast universe, it was almost negligible. However, it was said that it only took the Big Dipper galaxy 40 years to reach the ruins of Immortality, which had already surpassed the speed of light. It would only take a year to travel from the ruins of Immortality to Earth. They should have arrived on Earth by now. At that moment he was filled with emotions. Perhaps Kong Teichu thought that the real danger was in the South Gate galaxy. Actually, that was not the case. The news that Planet East had the opportunity to become an immortal had spread throughout the Big Dipper galaxy. Not only the Sacred Era Sword sect but the entire Big Dipper galaxy had also heard the news, and even other galaxies were heading to Earth. Planet East had already become a meal on the plate of many cultivation civilizations in the Milky Way. Kong Teichu and his wife thought that they could rest easy and enjoy eternal peace after dealing with the expedition to the ruins of immortality. Actually, that was just the beginning. Eldest senior brother frowned, and his eyelids drooped as if he was deep in thought. All of a sudden his eyelids shot up and his eyes flashed like lightning. He said in a cold voice, "Let's make an announcement first. We'll say that Old Fourth is missing and his name will be removed from the sect. If the matter is exposed and Kong Teichu questions us, we will pretend that we don't know anything." Fourth senior brother acted on his own and went with the Sacred Era Sword sect. As for the consequences, he will bear it alone, and it has nothing to do with the Wu Luo sect. Whether it is the new Heavenly Emperor Taichu Emperor or the Sacred Era Sword sect of the Big Dipper Galaxy, they are all far from the Wu Luo sect. They have nothing to do with us. At this point the other two patriarchs also sighed deeply. This was the situation that forced them to be strong. The Wu Luo sect was a high and mighty heavenly sect in this world. They had nascent soul cultivators in charge. In the eyes of mortals, low-level cultivators and even the secular dynasties, they were like gods. However, compared to Zhang Tian or the Wu Luo sect of the Big Dipper Galaxy, they were not worth mentioning. They were not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Maybe the Sacred Era Sword sect won't go on a killing spree when they arrive at Planet East. Second senior brother comforted himself. I heard that they brought many geniuses and elites from the lower realm of the ruins of immortality with them because they thought that the deity ground and Planet East were originally of the same origin. It would be easier for them to gain the recognition of the natives of Planet East with these geniuses and elites. According to my speculation, they don't want to destroy Planet East. They just want to find an immortal opportunity. I hope so. At the same time, in the fertile Earth realm, in a majestic palace hall that resembled an imperial palace, Gao Mingjing uneasily came in front of Realm Lord Wu Shujian and begged, "Realm Lord, although I served the Ruins Emperor's hall back then, I was forced to do so. I did not know the history and was deceived. You must put in a good word for me. Taichu Emperor destroyed the ruins of immortality, established the new heavenly palace, and ascended to the top of the world. We supported him with both hands. That's right. Fellow Taoist Shujian, you must put in a good word for him. Although we made mistakes, we've come to our senses." The other cultivators in this realm all nodded and bowed as they begged. In fact, they had not really submitted to Wu Shujian before. They were just unsure of who was stronger, Jiang Tian or the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality, and who would win in the end. Electing Wu Shujian as the Realm Lord was only a temporary measure. If Jiang Tian was defeated and killed, it would be easier for them to capture Wu Shujian. But now they didn't even have the slightest bit of mischievous thoughts. Such a conversation was not only circulating in the fertile lands in the savage world, but also in the barren desert, the Hailan Sea, the remote sky, the ice field and many other rank 2 and 3 planets. The Ruins of Immortality was the pinnacle of the various worlds. It was the core of the Southern Gate 2 Stars galaxy. All the other worlds revolved around it. No force dared to offend it. Now that Jiang Tian had destroyed the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality and established his unparalleled power, how could his previous enemies not be afraid? How could any orthodoxy or force not want to curry favor with Jiang Tian? At this moment Jiang Tian had completely ascended to the top of the Ruins of Immortality, and his position was supreme. Chapter 1670. While the entire Ruins of Immortality was in turmoil, Jiang Tian was sitting in the sky-swallowing palace in the sky-clear hall. Jiang Tian was leaning lazily on the golden dragon throne with 9 5-clawed true dragons coiled around it. Beside him, Zhao Xueqing, who had changed into a palace dress and looked graceful and luxurious, stood up straight. Her beautiful eyes were shining brightly, and she looked like a motherly model of the world. The sky-swallowing palace was built in the far north province. The provincial capital, Beidou, had been named by Jiang Tian as the capital of the new heavenly court. Beidou, the provincial capital of the far north province, had been the capital of the Ruins of Immortality for 3,000 years in history. However, later on, the great bandits caused trouble in the fallen Immortal Sea region and the southeast, so the capital of the Ruins of Immortality was moved to the Zhongyuan province to make it easier to suppress the great bandits. At this moment, the great bandits were all complacent. According to the order of seniority, they were sitting on the python chairs on the left and right of the court. Although they tried their best to look serious, They couldn't hide their bandit and murderous aura, which looked a little scary. Many Grotto Heavens sect masters, family leaders, provincial governors and city lords were kneeling on the ground, trembling in fear and uneasiness. They didn't dare to look at Zhang Tian for a second. "Your Majesty, the remnants of the ruins of Emperor's royal family have been wiped out. Those with cultivation, including the 6 Grotto Heavens and the Guardian families, were all killed. Those without cultivation will be dismissed as lowly people." Yun Zhongzi stood up and reported respectfully. "Okay." Zhang Tian nodded. Of course, the ruins of immortality had to be exterminated. At least they had to be weakened to the point where they couldn't resist and could only be used by him. However, if he wanted to use a soft policy, he had to do it slowly. Because not all the natives of the deity land were cultivators. If the natives of the ruins of immortality were forced, they might invade the lower worlds and kill the ordinary people of the deity land. That would make Zhang Tian very passive, which was not something he wanted to see. Therefore there was no need to be hasty. He had to destroy them one by one. However, we also found some clues. Although the remnants of the royal family of the ruins of immortality are far away from the main branch and don't know the inside story. But we still managed to get some information from Sky Palace. The old ruins emperor arrived at Saint Origin through the teleportation array. Yun Zhongzi said. "Saint Origin world, interesting?" Zhang Tian's pupils constricted at first, then he revealed a meaningful smile. Saint Origin continent was the first continent that Zhang Tian had stayed in for a long time in his previous life. At that time his master, the Undying Emperor, did not seem to like him very much. He threw him there and left. He said that a cultivator should not rely on others and seek help from others. However, he had suffered a lot there. Strictly speaking, Saint Origin world wasn't part of the central galaxy, but it was very close. It could also be considered a primary cultivation planet. This was because there were only a dozen or so returned to Void Stage Great Sages and several hundred Soul Formation Stage Mighty Figures there. Zhang Tian stayed there for over 100 years. When he finally formed his gold core, he was borrowed by his master. During the 100 years he had spent there, he had gathered all kinds of information. He knew the past 10,000 years and the future 10,000 years. The entire continent was transparent to him. Zhang Tian had never seen a soul formation stage mighty figure called Zhou Tian. In fact, there wasn't a single cultivator from the solar system who cultivated there. There are 3 possibilities. First, a series of butterfly effects happened after I returned. In my previous life, Zhou Tian didn't go to Saint Origin world, but he went there in this life. However, this possibility is very slim. Zhou Tian left for Saint Origin world a few hundred years ago, but I have only returned for 10 years. I didn't reverse time, so I can't affect the past. The second possibility is that Zhou Tian changed his appearance and name after arriving at Saint Origin world, or he took over someone else's body and lived there. Or his cultivation base dropped and he became a common person. For example, if he fell to the golden core stage, there would be hundreds of thousands or even millions of cultivators like him in Saint Origin world. How could I have noticed all of them? The third possibility is the most terrifying. Zhang Tian frowned. He couldn't help but feel a little worried. There might be something wrong with the teleportation portal. It might be unstable, or it might have encountered a black hole, a spatial tear, a storm, a wormhole, or a time turbulence. It might not have reached Saint Origin world at all. "I will take a look at this teleportation portal myself," Zhang Tian said. "About the expansion of the 3rd planet of the South Gate, to what extent has it expanded? All the information is in the Jade Slip. Everything is true." Yun Zhongzi put on a serious face and handed a jade slip to Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian's face became more and more serious. "What is the immortal ascension opportunity?" Zhang Tian asked again. "This information came from the sword god of the ruins Emperor Palace. The root of it is the legend of the Big Dipper star region. However, we don't know the details." Yun Zhongzi reported. "I suspect that it is the star destruction opportunity." Zhao Xueqing's face was calm. Her eyes flashed as she communicated with Zhang Tian through divine sense. "It's very likely." Zhang Tian's face became even more serious. He said through divine sense, "This opportunity has already been taken by us. The living beings on Earth are also affected by it. However, the cultivators of the Big Dipper star region don't know about it. They might still invade Earth. Zhou Xian nodded and said, yes. Even if they know that the spirit chi of the star destruction opportunity has been released and absorbed, Earth is still a cultivation planet. It is still very attractive. It's not just a cultivation planet. It can even be a sacred ground. Jiang Tian chuckled. He had also talked to Zhou Xian in the past 2 days. He had a deeper understanding of the situation on Earth. Earth had surpassed many planets in the central galaxy and was very suitable for cultivation. Otherwise, Zhou Xian wouldn't have reached the soul formation stage in such a short time. Even Huang Linger had reached the nascent soul stage. Jiang Tian even felt that it was possible to have a void-returned supreme saint in 1,000 years. That was because the spirit chi there had already surpassed that of the ruins of deity. However, it had only been a few years since the spirit chi had recovered. They weren't strong yet, like babies who had just learned to walk. The current situation on Earth was like a country that was rich in resources but hadn't developed its technology and military. It would become a target for the superpowers. So what's your next plan? Zhou Xian asked. First, I have to check the teleportation arrays. Then I also want to check the third planet of the South Gate. Jiang Tian said. The natives of the deity ground and the planet of the middle are connected. Before the terminus heavenly connection it was one. Mortals could ascend to the sky and become divine generals and divine weapons of the heavenly court. Divine generals and divine weapons of the heavenly court would also descend to the mortal world to work for mortals. Now the natives of the deity ground respect me. I have to solve this problem. Otherwise, I'll be ashamed of my position. After 2 days of rest, Jiang Tian had recovered to his peak state. He first went to the main base of the heavenly palace with Qing'er. The main base was already 1,000,000 miles away from the ruins of deity. It was like a bronze fortress that extended for 10 miles. It floated in the sky and looked magnificent like a divine palace. The entire palace was built with phoenix-colored gold, which was very precious even in the central galaxy. Various talisman formations and Tao markings were inscribed on the walls and pillars, and they flickered with the glow of treasures. They were like stars that were brilliant and seemed to come out from within, and they shone together with the dazzling stars that covered the sky. This sinner welcomes His Majesty Tai Chu. A group of Sky Palace executives knelt on the ground, trembling. Their faces were full of fear, but they were also full of respect. In fact, the wood spirits also worshipped the strong. Besides, after the persuasion and propaganda of the surrender party, they gradually believed that Jiang Tian was the reincarnation of a deity and could solve the crisis of the third planet of the South Gate. For a time they regarded Jiang Tian as their only savior. They even called him the peerless divine emperor. You've never launched an invasion. You're just monitoring the weather to save the people of the ruins of deity. What's wrong with that? Jiang Tian chuckled. Chapter 1671. In fact, the ordinary people of the ruins of immortality and the invaders of the ruins of immortality should be separated. Most of the people at the bottom of the ruins of immortality were deceived and deluded. There was no need for genocide. Thank you for your forgiveness, Your Majesty. The imperial astronomer was so moved that tears filled his eyes as he cheered for the emperor. You may rise. I'm going to take a look at the teleportation array. Jiang Tian chuckled. He didn't refer to himself as I or I. Instead, he seemed very approachable. In fact, he wasn't interested in being an emperor. Whether it was a sect or a dynasty, it was just a form of organization. Dynasties were usually hereditary, while sects selected successors, but they didn't care about bloodline, only ability and strength. However, when it came to the ancient heavenly court, it was actually a system of abdication. The virtuous could ascend to the throne and wield authority. In essence, it was no different from a sect. In fact, the level of power had nothing to do with the form of organization. For example, the 9 celestial sects in the central galaxy each controlled dozens or hundreds of galaxies and planets. There were countless planets like the ruins of immortality. However, they still used the sect system. The sect masters of the immortal sects looked down on the various worlds and all the races in the universe. They were famous throughout the universe, and their authority was tens of times greater than the ruins' emperors. As for the emperors in the mortal world, they weren't even worth mentioning. A nascent soul heavenly lord or a golden core cultivator could conquer an ordinary mortal kingdom and make the emperor worship him as if he were a deity. Zhang Tian had established the ancient heavenly court because of the strong suggestions of many powerful people. After all, it would be a good reason to do so, and it would help make history recognize them so that more powerful people would follow. Your Majesty, please follow me. The imperial astronomer led the way with a hunched back. After passing through layers of restrictions, Zhang Tian arrived at a magnificent hall. There were 2 words written on the board in the language of the ruins of immortality. Leaping to the sky. The hall was a mile wide and cylindrical. The roof was like overlapping lotus petals, but it could move. Once the array patterns were activated, it would immediately open and connect to the sky. This is the teleportation array. I heard that the old ruins Emperor Zhou Xian left from here. This teleportation array was located in the center of the hall. The array platform was relatively ancient and was made of a strange green metal. The moment he saw the rune, Zhang Tian's eyes suddenly narrowed. His face instantly paled and his body trembled slightly. Hubby, what's wrong? Zhou Xian slightly supported Zhang Tian's arm and transferred a stream of Xinyuan into his body. Zhang Tian's chaotic divine body had an extremely strong recovery ability. He had indeed recovered to his peak state before coming out. The formation must have stimulated him. However, Zhang Tian's temperament was extremely calm. Even if the world was overturned and all living beings were exterminated, it would not cause the slightest ripple in his heart. How could he lose his composure at this moment? It's fine. Zhang Tian smiled faintly and gave Zhou Xian a don't worry look. He then looked at the imperial astronomer and said, "Open the dome and let me take a look." "Yes, Your Majesty." The imperial astronomer hurriedly got to work. They saw it. The dome, which looked like layers of petals, slowly opened like a blooming flower, revealing a bright starry sky. The entire hall was like a giant chimney or a cannon barrel. At this moment, Zhang Tian's eyes became deeper and deeper, as if they were in the depths of the universe. Zhou Xian didn't notice any changes, but seeing his focused eyes, she didn't say anything and didn't disturb him. Time quickly passed. At midnight, the opening of the dome of the Leaping Sky Palace was pointed in a specific direction. Boom! The galaxy shook and the bright stars seemed to be on the verge of collapse. The Leaping Sky Palace also started to shake. Even the entire base seemed to be affected. The guards and the imperial astronomer stationed here were so scared that they prostrated on the ground and trembled. They felt a powerful energy descend. Everyone saw. Beams of dazzling starlight poured in from the dome like a long river. The array platform, which was engraved with countless complicated and mysterious runes, suddenly shone brightly. Specks of starlight spread like a dream, as if they were about to intertwine into something. Although the imperial astronomer was knowledgeable, the Leaping Sky Palace was an important place for the galaxy teleportation array. They had no right to enter, so this was the first time they saw such a scene. Everyone opened their eyes wide and looked over. As the starlight gathered, an indescribable existence slowly condensed on the array platform. It was a spatial chaos hole that seemed extremely empty, infinitely deep and all-encompassing, as if it could create all living things. Everyone looked at the chaos hole with complicated feelings. For a moment, they felt as if their bodies and divine souls were about to fall into it, unable to extricate themselves. They also felt as if they were facing a supreme energy that was about to crush them. The chaos hole was hundreds of meters wide and hung above the array platform, as if it was connected to another world. From the outside, it was like watching a slideshow that constantly changed. Within the chaos hole, a barbaric world would appear. The cliffs were thousands of meters tall, and there were layers upon layers of mountains. Wild beasts were running around. In the next moment, there was Hongmeng filled with purple mist. There were thousands of palaces as if it was a paradise on earth. In the next moment, the view was extremely high and far away. They could see a vast continent that seemed to be 10 times or even 100 times larger than the ruins of immortality. Essence chi poured down like waterfalls, laws soared into the sky like dragons, and laws were as hard as iron plates. Great Daos, which were millions of miles long, roared above this continent. Zhang Tian's pupils suddenly shrank. He laughed and said, "Ah, it is indeed Saint Origin continent. What a brilliant cultivation planet." Husband, isn't Saint Origin continent the first continent with abundant spiritual qi that you and your teacher set foot on in your previous life? Zhou Xian was pleasantly surprised. With this array, one step will allow one to travel billions of light years in an instant, and one will arrive at the coordinates. Jiang Tian's eyes were incomparably deep as he sighed. One step will allow one to travel billions of light years. Zhou Xian sucked in a breath of cold air and couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. She had never expected the wood spirit civilization to be so powerful. One had to know that the universe was too vast. Saint Origin continent was already outside the Milky Way, separated from the ruins of immortality by countless light years and countless stars. Although Saint Origin continent was not a part of the central galaxy, it was not far away. However, this teleportation array could accurately locate Saint Origin continent, just like shooting a gun from the moon and hitting a small boat in the ocean on Earth. Of course, it was extremely difficult. But husband, there is one thing that I can't figure out. Zhou Xian pulled Jiang Tian's sleeve and asked softly. In the era of the Tyrant Emperor, before facing the explosion of the third star and swallowing the wood spirit planet, the cultivators of the wood spirit planet had not yet been able to determine the coordinates of Saint Origin continent. They couldn't even determine the coordinates of the Big Dipper galaxy, which belonged to the Milky Way. They didn't even build a teleportation array, and instead used relatively backward interstellar spaceships. According to Jiang Tian's deduction, the cultivation civilization of the wood spirit planet should have been hundreds of thousands of years old, which was much more prosperous than the Empire of the Ruins of Immortality. The Empire of the Ruins of Immortality had been relying on the resources left behind by the wood spirit planet. For example, the interstellar battleships used for the expedition to Earth were built according to the old blueprints left behind in the era of the space city. However, their standards and skills were not superior to the experts. Therefore, it was naturally impossible for the descendants of the Ruins of Immortality to build such a teleportation array and determine the coordinates of Saint Origin continent. Jiang Tian's face gradually became solemn. He said in a serious tone, "Previously, when I saw the lines of the array, I felt that it should be the kind of array I've seen before. However, I couldn't be sure until I saw the stars converging and forming a chaotic whole. However, when the chaotic whole formed, I was sure that it was the Eternal Universe Star Array." Eternal Universe Star Array? Zhou Xian was slightly stunned. She asked, "Eternal Universe? Is it the sect you were from in your previous life, the Eternal Universe Immortal sect?" Chapter 1672. That's right. Jiang Tian's eyes glittered as if he was thinking. My master, the immortal monarch, is one of the most powerful figures in the deity realm. The Hengyu celestial sect was one of the 9 major celestial sects of the central galaxy, but it was only one of the puppets he supported in the central galaxy to control the lower worlds. In my generation there were 7 direct disciples of the Hengyu celestial sect and I was ranked 6th. I didn't know Senior Immortal was so powerful, Zhou Xian said in shock. The celestial sects were sects that had gone through the deity tribulation and ascended to the deity realm. There were 9 such sects in the universe. They were supreme and stood at the top of the universe, overlooking thousands of worlds and countless lives. The 9 celestial sects were the most important forces in the central galaxy. Each of them controlled thousands of cultivation planets and had great influence. They were like the pillars of the world, supporting the normal operation of the entire cultivation universe and maintaining order. Without the 9 celestial sects, the universe would have collapsed. However, such a celestial sect that controlled billions of galaxies was only a pawn of the immortal monarch. From this, one could see how terrifying the undying emperor's strength was. Jiang Tian smiled and didn't say anything. The immortal monarch was certainly powerful. It could be said that the layer of the universe that everyone was in, the vast sea of stars, was nothing more than a chessboard for him. He could observe all the worlds in the universe as if he were observing the lines on his palm. It would only take him a casual wave of his hand to destroy a star region. Collapsing the entire Dyson structure of the Milky Way was like stirring up a soap bubble in a basin of water. Of course, Jiang Tian had cultivated for 10,000 years in his previous life and had gone beyond the deity realm. He could compete with the Khanate gods and eventually reach the level of Hongmeng god in the divine realm. In terms of strength and knowledge, he was far more powerful than the immortal monarch. However, Jiang Tian didn't want to talk about it in detail, so he said, There are at least a dozen sects in the central galaxy other than the Hingyu celestial sect that can create this kind of chaos hole array that can travel billions of light years and cross a galaxy. However, the Hingyu celestial sect is famous for its research on the two supreme heavenly laws, space and time. The great chaos technique that uses everything in the world, especially the power of the stars, to create a connection between different space-time. In the entire universe, only Hingyu can do it. Although Zhang Tian had told Zhou Xian some things about his past life, it wasn't very detailed. After returning to Earth, they would immediately enter Saint Origin World, which was not too far away from the central galaxy. Zhang Tian had also done some science beforehand so that Zhou Xian would have a simple idea. You said that in 2018 in your previous life after I died your master took you away. But now there is a teleportation array left behind by your sect. This means that your sect was already active in the vicinity of the solar system 1,000 years ago. Zhou Xian frowned. Some thoughts appeared in her mind from time to time, but they were hidden in the fog. Near the solar system? That's especially accurate. Zhang Tian waved his hand to close the array. The runes dimmed and the starlight dissipated. The chaos hole trembled for a moment before it disappeared without a trace. The dome closed again. If the central galaxy is the international metropolis of the entire universe and a first-tier city, then Saint Origin World is a third-tier city. And the Milky Way was a village in a remote and desolate place. The solar system and the South Gate galaxy are the two neighbors of this small village. In other words, my master came from an international metropolis to a small border town. Furthermore, his people had left a teleportation formation here 1,000 years ago. His plan is very deep. Previously, when Zhang Tian had been studying Star Destroyer, he had used the soul-searching technique to search the memories of young demon master Ayuka and the ancient lake demon in the Tunguska Demon Lake. He had seen a white-robed deity descend to Earth 30 years ago and seal 1,000 orifices demon infant. It could even be said that Star Destroyer had descended to Earth to nurture this demon infant. At that time, Zhang Tian had felt that the white-robed deity was very familiar, as if he was an old friend. And then Zhang Tian was even more certain of his speculation. The white-robed deity who had nurtured, sealed and suppressed the 1,000 orifices divine infant should be an old friend of the Hingyu celestial sect. Zhang Tian stared at the resplendent starry sky through the roof of the great hall. His eyes flashed with a sharp light. Instantly, his sharp gaze seemed to penetrate through the billions of galaxies and the myriad of worlds, arriving at a place high above the 9 heavens, gazing down at the stars, eternal and unmoving. For a moment, there were many emotions in his eyes, such as loneliness, reminiscence, bitterness, and anger. He sighed in his heart. Master, did you set up all of this? In his previous life, after Qing'er committed suicide, Zhang Tian chose to commit suicide in 2018 and was taken away from Earth by his master. Zhang Tian had never thought that his master would lie to him or set up a plan around him. He had also never thought that Star Destroyer might have something to do with the Hingyu celestial sect. Because before he revealed his cultivation ability, Zhang Tian was just an ordinary person, without any cultivation talent or foundation to speak of. And Earth was just a dried-up planet in the age of Dharma ending. In his previous life he had only been able to surpass his predecessors and become a deity because of his great perseverance, great training and great luck. But after seeing the array of the Hingyu celestial cave, Zhang Tian was really shaken. That was the Hingyu celestial cave array. Only reincarnated grand cultivators like Zhang Tian, who was like an encyclopedia in the realm of cultivation, knew how difficult it was to set up such an array and its overwhelming power. As one of the top 10 galaxy-level teleportation arrays in the universe, this array gathered the power of the stars in half of the galaxy and formed a chaotic whole. Even a Dao reunion perfected immortal would have a hard time setting it up. Did Master really set it up himself? But Master didn't have to. Zhang Tian shook his head. Although the immortal monarch hadn't received the title of emperor yet, he had already become a deity and was one of the most powerful figures in the deity realm. He could travel the entire universe without any obstacles, so there was no need for him to set up such a teleportation array. Is it for the white-robed deity? Zhang Tian's face suddenly changed. More than 30 years ago, the clone of a grand cultivator turned into a white-robed deity and arrived on Earth. According to Zhang Tian's estimation, the white-robed deity should be at the soul formation level. A soul formation cultivator couldn't travel such a long distance across galaxies with just his body. Even if he could, the time and dharma power consumed would be terrifying and the gains would not make up for the losses. And this array was most likely for the white-robed deity. Besides, the Hengyu celestial sect was also involved in the planet destroyer. There might be even more super teleportation arrays that were set up earlier. Because the cultivators who came here might not be all void return saints or Tao reunion perfected immortals. After all, the arrival of Star Destroyer couldn't have been completed overnight. Who on earth is that white-robed deity? No, to be exact, whose clone is it? Jiang Tian calculated in his mind. A disciple of the Hengyu celestial sect. He had reached the soul formation level in his previous life. He liked to drink and had a green bird-shaped wine pot. Many details appeared in Jiang Tian's mind. He had searched a Yu's mind and his eyes glittered. Suddenly his pupils contracted and he frowned. Senior brother, could it be you? To be exact, it should be your clone. Chapter 1673. It was too similar. Jiang Tian was almost certain that his eldest senior brother was the white-robed deity. This was because many details, every movement and every characteristic were all in line. However, the cultivation level of the white-robed deity was much lower. It seemed that it was only an avatar of his eldest senior brother. His cultivation level was not even 1/10 of his. That was why he needed so many teleportation arrays. Could it be that it was not a coincidence that Master took me away in his previous life? Was it a long-term plan against me? Even the destruction of the planet had something to do with me? Jiang Tian frowned. Before this, Jiang Tian had thought that it was a coincidence that his master had traveled to Earth. He had been lucky to be taken away by his master. But now he felt that it was not so simple. However, the next moment Jiang Tian shook his head. The destruction of the planet was used to breed the 10,000 orifices demon infant. He definitely did not have that kind of constitution. Moreover, Jiang Tian could feel that in his previous life his master did not like him, much less think highly of or appreciate him. He rarely gave him any guidance. Most of the time his master threw him to some planets in the name of training, and left him to fend for himself. If he was the demon infant, why did his master not care about him so much? It seems that my previous speculation, although crazy, is the closest to the truth. Back then Master traveled to Earth to take Qing'er away. But Qing'er was already dead at that time, so Master took a step back and took me away. The destruction of the planet was also part of the Hengyu celestial sect's plan, and the destruction of the planet is very likely related to Qing'er. Jiang Tian's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. He was finally certain in his heart. In his master's eyes, the destruction of the planet deep in Earth and the expansion of the third planet of the South Gate could not escape his eyes. But in his previous life his master seemed to be able to hide this. Jiang Tian had suspected this before, but there was no direct evidence that the destruction of the planet was related to the Hengyu celestial sect. Now, after seeing the Hengyu celestial cave array and confirming the identity of the white-robed deity, Jiang Tian was certain. In his previous life, the Hengyu immortal sect had set up a plan since the beginning of time. They used the galaxy as a chessboard and the stars as chess pieces. They used the spiritual qi of many stars and the destruction of stars, as well as the soul seed of an unparalleled almighty to cultivate the 10,000 orifices demon infant with the annihilation physique. It was also guarded by the descendants of the demons of the Tunguska demon lake. However, the 10,000 orifices demonic nascent soul grew too quickly and became too powerful. Therefore, eldest senior brother's avatar turned into a white-robed deity and came to Earth to seal the fiend infant. At that time he had already used the immortal emperor suppression rune, but it was still useless. He could only take away the demonic infant and use his mortal body to seal it. This mortal body was very likely Zhou Xueqing. Of course, it was more likely that Zhou Xueqing's birth was part of the Hengyu celestial sect's plan. According to Jiang Tian's investigation, Zhou Xueqing's biological mother, Miss Naylan, had never slept with any man. She gave birth to Zhou Xueqing as a virgin. She had married Zhao Huqing to give Zhou Xueqing a normal-looking family. Zhou Xueqing's body was also very likely created by the Hengyu celestial sect using the blood of a grand cultivator with the stainless phoenix immortal body, other methods of creation or even planet destruction just like cloning technology. Rebirth from a drop of blood and creating a physical body were very easy for a grand cultivator of the celestial world at the emperor level. In addition, they had already created the placenta for planet destruction and immortal demons as the foundation, so it was even easier. Qing'er, relax your mind. I want to check your cultivation level with my divine sense. Jiang Tian said gently. Zhou Xueqing nodded her head. She wasn't one to talk nonsense. Jiang Tian's face turned slightly serious. He pointed his right middle finger at the small golden lake in the middle of his forehead. The divine sense of the prison-suppressing demon burst out and peered into Zhou Xueqing's body. He first searched her mind, but found that Zhou Xueqing's divine sense was pure and peaceful, without any fiend qi or evil energy. Zhou Xueqing's stainless phoenix immortal body was the most vast and deep, as if there was a world hidden in her body. Each of his veins was like a great river, and each of his blood qi was like a cloud in the sky, covering the sky and the sun. Even Jiang Tian could feel that each drop of essence qi was like a star, bringing with it a great pressure and power. It was a shocking sight. The world inside her body was vast and deep with a myriad of phenomena. Even if Jiang Tian's divine sense of the prison-suppressing demon was more than 10 times stronger than the previous soul devourer, it didn't matter if his divine sense covered the earth before the spirit qi revival. But now it was still difficult for Jiang Tian to see through Zhou Xueqing's body. In the end, Jiang Tian burned a trace of his blood essence and pushed the divine sense of the prison-suppressing demon to the extreme, finally penetrating the mountains and rivers and reaching Zhou Xueqing's divine treasures. Because Zhou Xueqing's mind was open and she allowed Jiang Tian to spy on her, the gate of the divine treasures palace was open. He saw that Zhou Xueqing's god had the same features as her original body. She wore a battle suit of laws and a phoenix-feathered purple gold crown. She had 2 phoenix wings on her back that shone brightly. Her feathers were like heavenly blades, making her look even more mystical. It made her look awe-inspiring and majestic like a holy deity. God Qing'er's power is really extraordinary. Jiang Tian exclaimed in his mind. Suddenly Jiang Tian's pupils contracted. He saw a baby girl wearing a red tutu with a wooden comb and 2 upturned pigtails, suddenly falling from the sky and suppressing Qing'er's divine treasures. Sister Qing, let me out and give me something to eat. The baby girl was chubby and looked like she was carved from jade. She was very cute. I'm really hungry. If you don't let me go, I'll eat you. However, all of a sudden, it transformed into 1,000,000 feet tall, towering between heaven and earth as if it could crush a planet. It opened its bloody mouth, revealing a ferocious look. Endless black demonic qi swept out from its body, turning into pillars of demonic qi that swept in all directions, and an evil aura covered the sky. That 10,000 orifices demonic infant is indeed sealed in Qing'er's body. Jiang Tian was about to remind her. Suppress. God Zhou Xueqing suddenly opened her eyes and leaped out from the divine treasures. Her sleeves fluttered in the wind like a celestial, but she was also awe-inspiring. She gave a low shout and pointed in the air. Immortal light spread out from her fingertips. The 10,000 orifices demonic infant's body was instantly covered with immortal light runes. These runes were very mysterious and abstruse. They were actually Emperor's Throne immortal runes. They were incomparably heavy and each one was as heavy as a mountain. Under the suppression, the 10,000 orifices demonic infant kept shrinking. In the end, it was stepped on by God Qing'er. The demonic infant kept hitting the ground and wailing like a naughty child. I'm your sister and you're actually so vicious to me. I haven't eaten for so many years. I'm so hungry that I'm just skin and bones. Seal. God Zhou Xueqing flicked her fingers continuously, and many vital qi particles, laws and fragments of great Tao gathered into runes again. They were like huge rocks, long rivers and meteorites and suppressed down. Little bitch. Sooner or later I'll kill you. And I'll sleep with your husband. Kong Teichu, what are you looking at? I'm going to sleep with you. After the 10,000 orifices demonic infant cursed a few times, it instantly became drowsy. It bit its finger and fell into a deep sleep, even drooling. Using his divine senses to pry into Zhou Xueqing's body was very uncomfortable. At this moment, Jiang Tian's head was covered in cold sweat, and his face was as pale as paper. He had a splitting headache and he couldn't hold on any longer. He hurriedly recalled the prison-suppressing devil god soul. Husband, are you okay? Zhou Xian had been supporting Jiang Tian. Just now Jiang Tian was on the verge of collapse and it was too frightening. At this moment she couldn't help but worry. I'm fine. Jiang Tian let out a long sigh in his heart. It looked like Zhou Xian's stainless phoenix maiden immortal body's devouring power was very strong, and it had been sealing and suppressing the 10,000 orifices demonic infant all these years. As Zhou Xian's cultivation grew stronger, she could even completely refine the 10,000 orifices demonic infant. However, what puzzled Jiang Tian was that Zhou Xian couldn't sense the existence of the 10,000 orifices demonic infant at all. Even the suppression of the 10,000 orifices demonic infant was just a kind of instinct, and Zhou Xian didn't know either. This was very strange. According to the conversation between eldest senior brother and the demon king of Tunguska ancient lake, it seems that the 10,000 orifices demonic infant was raised from the seed of a powerful being. But which powerful being is it? Jiang Tian frowned. However, Jiang Tian couldn't be sure. Because the Annihilators were a very mysterious race and they were very different from the three major races of the human race, the demon race and the demon race. They couldn't even be counted as living beings and they didn't even have physical bodies. They were special energy bodies with consciousness. In his previous life, Jiang Tian had joined forces with the Star Glory Federation to fight against the Annihilators for hundreds of years, but his understanding of the powerful beings of this race was very limited. Forget it. Let's not think about this for now. Without a clue, Jiang Tian didn't persist on this question. As for why Master took me away? Jiang Tian was stunned for a moment, and he suddenly looked deeply at Zhou Xian and said, I'm afraid it's because of luck. Chapter 1674. Wealth, companionship, law and land had always been regarded as the four essentials of cultivation. But with Jiang Tian's experience, the importance of luck was no less than the first four essentials. In this world, there were always some sons of heaven who seemed to have ordinary aptitude and talent, and came from poor backgrounds, but always had excellent luck as if heaven and earth were taking care of them. All obstacles made way for them and in a short period of time, they achieved results that others could not compare to. On the surface, it seemed that they had excellent luck. But with Jiang Tian's experience after he ascended to the immortal world and the divine realm in his previous life, these so-called sons of luck were all taken care of by the Supreme Mighty who could control the will of heaven and earth. These Supremes could replace the will of heaven with their own hearts, and all things in the world were their subordinates and had to act according to their will. Zhou Xian was a seed cultivated by the immortal monarch, and naturally he could not let anything happen to her. Therefore, not only did he gather a lot of spiritual energy, but he also blessed her with great luck. She was like a son of the stars, a son of the star region who was favored by heaven and earth. Even if her potential had not been unleashed and she was helpless, no one could do anything to her. For example, if Zhou Xian met a robber in the wilderness and was in a desperate situation, even a meteorite would fall and smash the robber to death. At this moment, the heavy fog that shrouded him in his previous life suddenly disappeared at this moment, and he was suddenly enlightened. Many details that he had neglected in his previous life were vividly displayed in front of him at this moment. In his previous life, those mistakes, regrets, sentiments, grief and indignation that he had deliberately suppressed at this moment, he could not help but think about them. All kinds of emotions rose up in his heart. This kind of luck is difficult to move. Why did the great luck, the great opportunity transfer to me? Only when Qinger made a great wish before she died, and her will was incomparably strong, she could move heaven and earth and give me the luck. Thinking of this, Jiang Tian pinched his beloved wife's soft jade-like hand and looked at her sideways, but the side of her face was slightly blurred. Jiang Tian's eyes were hazy with tears, but he could see Zhou Xian smiling at him. In his previous life he was just an ordinary person. Although Qinger's body and soul were destroyed, her luck was transferred to him under her wish. That was why his master had taken him away. It was because such luck was extremely hard to come by. That was the reason why his master had left him in Saint Origin World at the beginning. He wanted to check the effects of the luck in his body. Therefore, although he was surrounded by dangers in the cultivation world, he was still able to get through them safely and obtain many benefits. His cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. In fact, in this life, Zhang Tian had also obtained a lot with the blessing of Zhou Xueqing's providence. He had obtained the Mother Stone Cauldron and the Absolute Heaven Sword, which were extremely rare in the entire mortal universe. Silly girl. In fact, if you had not been so devoted to me that you would have diverted and dispersed your fortune. You definitely won't be forced to death by a few people from the secular world. How can I make it up to you in this life? Thinking of this, Zhang Tian did not know why, but his heart ached. He sighed deeply in his heart. In his previous life, Zhang Tian was really unbearable. He was just a middle-aged uncle who had failed. His fate had been full of ups and downs. However, Zhou Xueqing still did not leave him. Even before she chose to commit suicide, she was still thinking about her lover and praying in her heart. Her willpower became an obsession, moving the heavens and earth as she blessed Zhang Tian with her great luck. In fact, if not for Zhou Xueqing being too worried about Zhang Tian, she would definitely not have died. Zhang Tian suspected that Lu Wangfeng and the others might have used him to threaten Zhou Xueqing. In order to protect Zhang Tian, Zhou Xueqing chose to commit suicide. She also made a great wish and gave birth to an obsession, transferring her great luck to Zhang Tian. Although this kind of transfer would cause more than half of the luck to be lost, and even about 1/10 of it would be left. However, it still allowed Zhang Tian to turn misfortunes into blessings, seek blessings and avoid disasters, and obtain many opportunities and resources. Therefore, after Zhang Tian arrived in the cultivation world, his cultivation level and talent soared. He reached the soul formation stage in 100 years, reached the unification stage in 300 years, and finally, in a short 500 years, with a record-breaking speed in the entire universe, he successfully transcended the tribulation and ascended to the celestial world. Within 10,000 years, he was invincible in the celestial world and the divine world, and became a Hongmeng god. Of course, after entering the celestial world and the divine world, the effect of this kind of blessing from the mortal universe was greatly reduced and the impact was minimal. However, it was undeniable that the blessing from Qing'er's transfer of luck had laid a foundation for Zhang Tian. Without that luck, Zhang Tian would have succeeded in committing suicide at that time, and he would not have been taken away by the immortal monarch. Without that karmic luck, it was very likely that Zhang Tian would have already perished in the cruel and dangerous world of cultivation when he was still very weak, turning into a pile of withered bones and a handful of yellow soil. Although Zhang Tian's achievements in his previous life far exceeded the scope of the Son of Luck, one had to know that even the complete Son of Luck, who was blessed by the heavens, was far from reaching the height of Zhang Tian. It was very likely that he would stop at transcending the tribulation and becoming an immortal. In his previous life, Zhang Tian suppressed all the worlds in the heavens and created a new universe, the god of Hongmeng. He was a supreme figure who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Buddha and Taoist primogeniture. He could also create such a Son of Luck with a wave of his hand. However, this still could not deny the help that Zhou Xueqing had given him. Just like a fierce tiger that fell into the plains, a dragon that was trapped in the shallows, it was Zhou Xueqing who sent him to the deep sea and mountains, like a strong wind that sent him to the clouds. Then Zhang Tian could use this first resource to travel the vast sea, ride the wind to the 9 heavens, and become the Taichu celestial lord who dominated the celestial world, the god of Hongmeng who created the world. Without Zhou Xueqing, Zhang Tian did not know what his fate in his previous life would have been. However, he was sure of one thing, and that was that he could not transcend the tribulation and become an immortal and enter the celestial world in 500 years. It was even more impossible for him to be invincible, break through the celestial world, the divine world, and become the god of Hongmeng within 10,000 years. It's just that the Hengyu immortal sect is one of the 9 major immortal sects in the cultivation world, and it has always considered itself a righteous sect. How could it cultivate a 10,000 orifices demon infant? Could this demon infant be related to the common enemy of the 3 realms, the Annihilator? Could it be that Master and the Hengyu immortal sect are secretly in cahoots with the Annihilator? Zhang Tian frowned, puzzled. Various memories from his previous life surfaced in his mind. His master, the undying sovereign, was a man of few words and was too strict with many of his disciples. He was too murderous and could not be considered a perfect person. However, in general he was a man of justice and had never had anything to do with the Annihilator or the demon race. Could it be that he was a two-faced person, or that he had reached some kind of agreement with the Annihilator camp and became a spy planted in the celestial world? Or perhaps he was an annihilator himself. For a moment, many thoughts and countless speculations flooded Zhang Tian's mind. He could not figure them out at all, and it made his head hurt. Let's not think about it anymore. Zhang Tian shook his head, and his expression gradually became firm. The undying sovereign is very powerful. This layer of the universe, the galaxy of billions of light years, is just his chessboard. But in this life I have been reborn. No matter what, I have to jump out of this chessboard, become the player, and control my own fate. Whoever dares to use me, Kong Teichu, as a chess piece, I will kill even the immortals in the 9 heavens. His gaze became sharp and cold like a sword. It was as if it could cut through everything and sweep through all the realms in the universe. In my previous life, I relied on the luck that Qing'er transferred to me to pass the tribulation and become an immortal. But in this life, even without the help of luck, it will be easy for me to pass the tribulation again with my own hands. It will not be difficult for me to ascend to the 9 heavens and enter the celestial world or the divine realm. In this life, I want to make up for all the regrets and mistakes of my previous life. I want Qing'er to live a peaceful and happy life, to live a happy life. I don't want her to be a puppet or a puppet to seal the demon infant. I want all the people who respect and love me to live a happy life and all the enemies to pay the price. I want to go back to the 9 heavens and stand at the top of the worlds. I want the whole universe to know my name. My fate is in my own hands. Even the undying sovereign is not qualified to control my fate. Even the Buddha and the Tao masters have to bow before me. Honey, what are you thinking about? Zhao Xueqing asked worriedly. Don't worry. Zhang Tian smiled faintly, and the sharp light in his eyes disappeared. Zhang Tian was going to hide the fact that there was a demon infant sealed in Zhao Xueqing's body for the time being. There was no need to add more psychological pressure to her. In Zhang Tian's opinion, this 10,000 orifices demonic infant could not replace Zhao Xueqing's consciousness. Besides, Zhang Tian was confident that as Zhang Tian's power increased and reached the soul formation level, he would be able to separate it from Zhao Xueqing with the divine powers he had cultivated in his previous life. Zhao Xueqing frowned but did not ask more. She had never talked nonsense. There were some things that Zhang Tian would not hide from her when it was time to tell her. There must be a reason why he didn't say anything at this time. Next, let's go and see the inflated 3rd planet of the South Gate. Zhang Tian's eyes became deep again. He wanted to confirm a speculation that he had when he saw planet destruction on Earth. Chapter 1675. A day later, a magnificent spaceship arrived 150 million kilometers away from the 3rd planet of the South Gate. Originally, with Zhang Tian's cultivation, it would take him at least several months to traverse the entire Southern Gate 2-star system and reach the Southern Gate 3-star with just his physical body. However, spaceships like the Rising Sun had been modified by Zhang Qinzhen to reach sublight speed, so it would only take them a day to reach the 2nd planet of the South Gate. At this time, the distance between Zhang Tian and the 3rd planet of the South Gate was equivalent to the distance between Earth and the Sun. But looking at it with the naked eye, the 3rd planet of the South Gate occupied half of the sky and filled his vision. It was at least 100 times larger than the Sun, and its power and radiation were also 100 times more than that of the Sun. Endless red fire essence rolled in the sky like a long river, and the space was distorted. The great Tao of fire and the Dharma laws intertwined, forming a chain of order inside the star. This was a kingdom of fire, extremely blazing. Foundation establishment cultivators wouldn't even last a second before they were reduced to dry corpses and charcoal. Even gold core cultivators wouldn't be able to withstand the heat. In order to preserve their lives, they would have to flee. Even if nascent soul heavenly lords could withstand it, they would also feel very uncomfortable. Open. Zhang Tian tried his best to widen his eyes. He opened his purple lightning pupils, and purple chaotic lightning shot out from his pupils. He looked up into the sky and down into the underworld. He wanted to find out the truth about the 3rd star of the South Gate. However, it didn't work. Zhang Tian's eyes penetrated billions of stars, but he could only see the surface of the star, which was blocked by layers of energy and Dharma laws. He couldn't see the situation inside at all. Qing'er, go again. Zhang Tian shouted in a low voice. Whoosh. Although the rising sun is huge, it does not appear cumbersome in the vast universe. The space curvature engine roars, and the speed is more terrifying than the space jump. It suddenly disappears in place, and the next moment, it suddenly appears tens of millions of kilometers away. After several times, it was still tens of millions of kilometers away from the third planet of the South Gate, dozens of times more than the distance from Earth to the Moon. At this moment, there was nothing else in Jiang Tian and Zhou Xueqing's field of vision. There was only a glaring scarlet, blazing to the extreme as if their eyes were about to be blinded by it. Even though never-setting sun was the crystallization of the refining civilizations of the Empire of the Immortal Ruins and the Overlord dynasty, and after Zhang Qing'an's modification, it was enhanced with several layers of defense arrays from the Star Glory Federation. At this time, Zhou Xueqing felt very uncomfortable. She was a soul formation cultivator and had the immortal body of the pure phoenix. She was a genuine deity soul formation cultivator who could compete with normal void return cultivators and kill sacred soul formation cultivators from the lower worlds. As for normal soul formation cultivators, they were no match for her at all. But at this moment he also felt very uncomfortable. Zhou Xueqing blushed and her plump chest heaved violently. She felt that her skin was about to crack, and the blood all over her body was about to dry up. She only felt a little better after swallowing a few pills that Jiang Tian had prepared in advance to calm her heart, reduce her heat and protect her body. Zhou Xueqing was a tough person. Even though she was very uncomfortable, she didn't say a word. She just focused on controlling the sailing magical artifact, making sure that she wouldn't cause trouble for Jiang Tian. "Qing'er, stop. I want to go out of the cabin and watch," Jiang Tian said softly. At this time, never-setting sun was already in a very bad situation. All kinds of protective and temperature-maintaining runes were emitting brilliant light, resisting the high temperature and strong radiation outside. The energy supply components of the rune arrays were operating to the maximum, emitting bursts of noises that sounded like the breathing of an old bull. The consumption and wear were also very serious. The elite alarms were ringing. Under such circumstances, they couldn't get any closer. Previously, Jiang Tian released a few crystal eye detectors that Zhang Qingzhen had personally built, but they couldn't withstand the high temperature. The runes were damaged and they all malfunctioned or even melted. The temperature of the third star of the South Gate was already high enough to melt gold and iron. Ordinary void return cultivators couldn't withstand the heat at this position. Only Dao integration perfected immortals could withstand it. "Be careful. I'll wait for you here." Zhou Xueqing's beautiful eyes flashed with a trace of worry as she said softly. "No need." Jiang Tian smiled and said, "Go back 3 million miles. I'll transform the chaotic divine body into the vermilion bird divine body. We can definitely return safely." Zhou Xueqing was a smart woman. The man had already made a choice and he was more experienced than her. He had also thought about it thoroughly. Of course, she had to obey his orders like a loyal subordinate, instead of being pretentious and wasting his time. After leaving the unsetting sun, Jiang Tian immediately transformed into the vermilion bird divine body with the head of a bird and the body of a human with wings. The chaotic divine infant sat cross-legged in the spirit embryo with its eyes closed like a Buddha. The chaotic divine disk, which was as bright as a galaxy, hovered behind it. At the moment, it had all been transformed into the vermilion bird's true essence, which was like the sun in the sky, providing endless energy for Jiang Tian. At the moment, Jiang Tian felt as if he could burn down thousands of Daos and destroy the world. He could even burn a Dao integration perfected immortal to death. Of course, that might be an illusion, but it was also because Jiang Tian was almost entirely made up of the divine laws of fire. He was extremely powerful and wasn't afraid of the true fire of the sun at all. The real golden crows in the universe and the purebred golden crows all live in the sun. They feed on the essence of the sun and use fire as a guide. Among the divine beasts of the universe, the vermilion bird is also known for mastering the Tao of fire. It's completely made up of the essence of fire and is as powerful as the golden crows. Although I'm only a nascent soul cultivator, I control the divine laws of the vermilion bird, which is equivalent to the baby of the vermilion bird, so I'm certainly not afraid of the star fire. Let's not talk about going inside the star fire, but I can definitely observe it from a close distance. Seeing that Zhou Xueqing had steered the rising sun back to its original position, Jiang Tian turned around and looked at the third planet of the South Gate with a hint of confidence in his eyes. Whoosh! Jiang Tian flew again. When he was 100,000 miles away from the third planet of the South Gate, a giant star storm erupted from the inside, throwing out tongues of fire that could touch Zhou Xian and even envelop him. The heavens and the earth were blazing hot and it smelted everything. It burned space to the point of ceaselessly warping and collapsing, and it even formed numerous spatial storms. Not even the smallest life could exist there. It had completely turned into a dead zone. Endless essence of fire gushed out and Dharma laws intertwined with the most violent energy, which exploded and condensed in an endless cycle. Even a soul formation overlord would be burned to ashes in an instant and void return cultivators wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Zhou Xian stopped and looked up. Terrifying chaotic thunderbolts shot out of his eyes, as if they had penetrated the endless void and the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Layers of essence of fire were penetrated by his gaze and an extremely vast star fire appeared in front of him. The Dharma laws and Dharma laws of fire would turn into all kinds of phenomena, such as phoenixes burning the plains and true dragons dancing in the sky. There were even rushing rivers, steep peaks, swaying Fusang divine trees and soaring golden crows. They didn't have much intelligence. They were just external manifestations of the Dharma laws and Dharma laws of fire. But once they had intelligence they could be called divine beasts, which were very terrifying. There were even fire essence stones formed from the great Tao of fire that contained the origin of fire. If one could control and restrain them they would be priceless. If one exploded them like an artifact, a fist-sized stone would be able to destroy a vital planet. Those were all common situations inside the star fire. Zhou Xian didn't stop and kept looking. Inside the third star, a magnificent array formation appeared. It was like an immortal gold floating in hot lava. It was extremely vast, comparable to a life planet, and it was easily tens of thousands of miles wide. Eternal Universe Demon Suppressing Array. 5 Elements Furnace Array. 10,000 Arts in 1. Sky Severing Array. There were a few dozen formations. Zhou Xian glanced over and saw a few of them were considered top-tier sacred formations and immortal formations. Each of them could easily kill soul formation divine lords and void return saints. Even Tao reunion perfected immortals couldn't escape. They were extremely dangerous. At the same time, there was an extremely large amount of spirit chi being drawn out by the arrays and surging in the direction of Earth. I knew it. Even the entities of the ancient times can't do much. Zhou Xian was a bit shocked at the moment. Zhou Xian had guessed before that the spirit chi in planet destruction didn't only belong to Earth. Most of it came from nearby planets, including the South Gate Galaxy, the Big Dipper planet region, the Sirius star region and the Cetus constellation. Otherwise, the spirit chi of Earth alone wouldn't have been able to create the 1,000 orifices fiend infant, which was as powerful as a soul formation cultivator. That was indeed the case. Chapter 1676. Of course, what Zhou Xian saw was only a part of this grand scheme. There should be some relay arrays between the South Gate Galaxy and the solar system to ensure the long-distance transport of spirit chi. However, what surprised Zhou Xian was that there were also the 5 Elements Furnace Array and the 10,000 Paths to 1. These 2 super arrays belonged to the 5 Elements Immortal Sect and the 10,000 Paths Immortal Sect respectively. They were the secret arts of their sects and not even the Hingyu Celestial Sect knew about them. This meant that the arrival of the ancient Star Destroyer and the birth of the 10,000 Orifices fiend embryo weren't planned by the Hingyu Celestial Sect alone, but at least 3 other celestial sects were involved. Besides, there must be at least Tao reunion perfected immortals and elders in these celestial sects. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had the chance and power to mobilize so many resources. The method of creating the ancient Star Destroyer deep inside Earth has nothing to do with the 9 celestial sects. It's more likely to be from the demons. This means that there are also powerful demons involved in this scheme. Zhou Xian's eyes widened. He felt that this scheme was 10 times more terrifying than he had imagined. It could have been set up 1,000,000 years ago and involved a wide range of areas. Wait. Zhou Xian was about to leave. This isn't normal spirit chi, it's deity chi. But then he suddenly noticed a shocking detail. Normally there was only fire energy inside a star. Spirit chi was extremely rare. However, the universe was vast and mysterious. It was inevitable that some strange situations would occur. Stars would also erupt with some spirit chi. There might also be some conversion arrays around the third star that turn the fire energy into spirit chi. Therefore, when he saw the spirit chi gushing toward Earth like a galaxy, Zhang Tian did not pay much attention to it. But he noticed it at this moment. This wasn't normal spirit chi, but the deity chi that only existed in the deity realm. How could this place extract such pure immortal chi? Zhang Tian was surprised. The deity chi was also called the deity chi of the 9 heavens. It was extremely rare in the universe. It was rare even in the central galaxy, let alone in a remote place like the Milky Way. Anyone who was able to obtain a strand of 9 heavens immortal chi was an extremely great opportunity and good fortune. They had the opportunity to advance to the limit and easily reach a height that was originally unimaginable. Spiritual herbs, jade marrow origin fluid, and Lingji elixir were all slightly inferior compared to it. Seeing immortal chi in the Milky Way was as surprising as seeing a supersonic passenger plane in a primitive jungle. Where is the source of this immortal chi? Zhang Tian's eyes widened as he stared at the demon again. His purple lightning pupils were pushed to the limit. His lightning-like gaze disregarded everything and pierced through the 9 hells, peering into the yellow springs. His gaze pierced through the many eternal star laws and the layers of monstrous arrays. Under the layers of formations, there was a monstrous amount of immortal spiritual energy that was as translucent as jewels and diamonds. The immortal spirit chi filled the inside of the third planet of the South Gate. It contained a powerful energy that was 10 times or even 100 times more powerful than the power of a star. There's actually an endless amount of immortal spirit chi inside the third South Gate star, and it's not just ordinary fire tribute spirit chi. The immortal spirit chi is so pure, vast and powerful. It's much more powerful than that of the 9 celestial sects in the central galaxy. It seems to be from the deities in heaven. Zhang Tian lowered his head and a glint of confusion flashed in his eyes. Immortal spirit chi was too hard to come by. Other than the 9 celestial sects, the other sacred grounds and large sects in the central galaxy couldn't get it. Only those who had reached the tribulation level, as if they were the children of the universe, could receive a wisp of immortal chi from the deities in heaven to strengthen their bodies. Even though there was a legend in the world of cultivation that one could live a few thousand years longer after taking a breath of immortal spirit chi, which was a bit exaggerated, it wasn't a problem to live a few hundred years longer. It was at least equivalent to a supreme Tao pill or even a heavenly pill. Right then, there were more than 10 million wisps of immortal spirit chi inside the third planet. It was so vast that it could almost create a medium-sized immortal sacred ground and become famous in the central galaxy. Could it be that there's a real immortal hidden inside this star? Zhang Tian's eyes widened. The real deity here wasn't a Tao reunion perfected immortal. It was a deity from the deities in heaven. Zhang Tian was shocked. Was there a deity inside the third planet in order to destroy the planet and nurture the fiend fetus? If that was the case, the immortal monarch and the others were really generous. Something's not right. Zhang Tian narrowed his eyes and frowned. He was counting quickly with his fingers. The arrays there were only void return sacred arrays and Tao reunion deity arrays. In this universe or even in the central galaxy, they would be extremely lethal. However, it would be difficult to kill a deity in heaven. The deities in heaven were immortal and had mastered the deity Tao. Their dharma power was unimaginably powerful. They often used the galaxy as a bathtub and the stars as a pillow. They could destroy the universe with a single slap. Their power was too terrifying. If it were a real deity in heaven, he would have escaped long ago. No. Although the immortal spirit chi is as vast as an ocean, there is a hint of death chi in it. It seems to have decayed for thousands of years. It's like the body of the oldest deity in the deity world. Could it be that it's only suppressing an immortal's corpse, or even just an organ? Zhang Tian shook his head. His eyes flashed again as he continued watching. The heavy immortal chi scattered, and an unimaginably huge head appeared under a great formation that spun non-stop like a millstone. Zhang Tian looked over and felt that the gigantic head was almost beyond his line of sight, occupying a small portion of the interior of the star. Even his divine senses, which could spread out for 10,000 miles in an instant, couldn't sense the entirety of this head. He didn't know if there was a body and limbs under it. This head was like a great mountain island, floating in the billowing red flames of magma. It was bound by the thick dragon-like chains of the flame essence laws. A single eyelash was like a towering tree, A single strand of hair seemed like it could cut apart the sun and moon. An eye was the size of a star, and a slightly open mouth was like a black hole. It lay there quietly as if it had been there since ancient times and no Dharma power could destroy it. Plang. Zhang Tian even saw deity seals as huge as mountains which could easily kill Dao Reunion perfected immortals, flashing with deity light and smashing towards the head. But only a white mark was left, which wasn't worth mentioning at all. It seemed to be a supreme giant that had been sleeping there since the ancient times. It lay on the star and was truly indestructible. It didn't look like a head but more like a planet. It was even breathing. Every time it breathed, it would raise a solar storm that was hundreds of thousands of kilometers wide, blowing the earth-shattering arrays that were as large as stars into the air like balloons in the wind. Even though it was almost dead, its terrifying energy made Zhang Tian feel suffocated. This was a true immortal, perhaps even a giant who was on par with the undying emperor. If it was still alive, no one in the entire universe would be able to defeat it. Chapter 1677. How long had this deity lived? How long had it been suppressed here? 100,000 years? 1,000,000 years? Or even billions of years? What was its level when it was alive? Even Zhang Tian couldn't tell. Firstly, Zhang Tian's divine sense was already very weak when it reached the head after being blocked by many sacred arrays, deity arrays, sun essence and fire essence. Secondly, the power of the eternal star and many arrays had been wearing down the head's dharma power and essence chi over the years. It was difficult to estimate how much it was being worn down. Zhang Tian even suspected that it was still alive and that the deity's head was behind the devouring of the wood spirit planet tens of thousands of years ago and the anomaly of the third planet. It had brought a star 100 times larger than the sun to devour planets and try to extend its life. At this moment, Zhang Tian was also amazed by its power and death. A head that had been dead for 1,000,000 years or even tens of millions of years, was imprisoned by the Dharma laws and the Great Tao. During the long years, the fire of the eternal star was constantly burning. Layers of seals, deity arrays and sacred arrays suppressed and destroyed it again and again, but it still existed forever and fought against the heavens. That was too terrifying. In the cultivation world, golden core cultivators could live for 1,000 years and nascent soul cultivators could live for 10,000 years. However, in the dimension of 1,000,000 years, even soul formation cultivators would turn into dust and void return grand saints would rot into bones. Only those who stood at the top of all Tao like the Buddha and the Tao Lord could survive for that long. Who is it? Zhang Tian thought. But he didn't have a clue at the moment. In terms of the dimension of the universe, the history was too long. It was divided into several epochs and each epoch was divided into several eras. Countless deities had died during that time and some of them were unknown to the public. Besides, there were too few clues presented to Zhang Tian, which made it difficult for him to make a judgment. What a big deal. The eternal star is the chess piece and the star river is the chessboard. The deity's head is the firewood and the true fire of the sun is the furnace. It can even be said that teacher is just one of the executors in this world-shaking situation. Zhang Tian was shocked and his eyes narrowed slightly. However, Zhang Tian could already confirm that this situation was definitely related to Zhao Xueqing. He and Qing'er were just his teacher's chess pieces. Zhang Tian's achievements in his previous life had already surpassed that of the immortal emperor. In this life, Zhang Tian had returned with 10,000 years of memories. How could he be reduced to a chess piece again and be manipulated by him? I originally thought that I would have to spend at least 100 years of hard work to reach the return to void stage and obtain the power of a Tao integration perfected immortal to solve the problem of the third star of the South Gate. Now it seems like I don't need that anymore. Zhang Tian rubbed his chin and revealed a faint smile. This immortal corpse's life force was almost completely gone. Zhang Tian turned around and only needed to reinforce the formation to suppress it. Like the straw that broke the camel's back, it would completely fall. The third South Gate star naturally stopped moving. To be honest, if Zhang Tian saw the Eternal Universe Demon Suppression Formation and the Five Elements Furnace Formation in his previous life, he would definitely be amazed. But now his vision was too broad. He could see at a glance that although the formation was made of excellent materials and used a lot of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, many of the formation patterns were flawed and the arrangement of the components was wrong. It was simply a waste of God's gifts. Who is this immortal corpse? Yes. Jiang Tian glanced at the immortal corpse a few more times. In the end he had no clue and could only remember many details and clues. Then the vermilion bird flapped its wings and disappeared from where it was. In an instant, it traveled 1,000,000 miles and went straight to the unsetting sun where Zhou Xian was. The night in the ruins of immortality was much brighter than the night on Earth. Hylon, Barbarian, Desert, Ice Field and other stars were all dazzling. They were actually planets, but they looked like satellites because they were so large that even the mountains and rivers on them could be faintly seen. It was as if countless moons crowded in the sky. Qing'e, is the night in the ruins of immortality beautiful? Jiang Tian and Zhou Xian walked hand in hand in the imperial garden of the sky-devouring palace. Here the pavilions and terraces reflected each other, and the halls were continuous like celestial palaces. Spirit energy formed a waterfall that fell down like a waterfall, and the spirit spring gurgled as it flowed through the bottom of the stream that was piled up with crystals. A casual sip of the spirit spring here could prolong one's life and cure all diseases. As the cobblestones at the bottom of the stream, if set up into an array, they could let mortals sublimate to the limit and step into the foundation establishment level within 3 days. But here they could only be used as decorations. Orchids swayed and vines as thick as arms climbed on the towering trees. Every branch and leaf was crystal clear, exuding a dreamy light. None of them were ordinary. They were all spirit herbs, exuding a refreshing fragrance that could calm people's hearts and make them feel magical. Beautiful, but not as good as my hometown. Zhou Xian chuckled. Perhaps the feelings for the place where she had fought for him were even deeper. Because there are relatives on the ancestral planet and a daughter in the hometown. Jiang Tian couldn't help but take out the phone Qing'e brought to admire it. Great-grandpa, I want to ride a horse. I want to compete with Uncle Wukong. On the lawn of the Tianqing school a little girl walked over. She was wearing a red didu and couldn't walk steadily. Her porcelain white face was chubby and her eyes were big and round. They were as black as obsidian. Okay. Jiang Chongging's cultivation was also improving. His body was healthy and his white hair was turning black. Wearing a silk training suit, he looked like an immortal and had the demeanor of a master. Even though he was chosen by his great-great-granddaughter, he was so kind that he had no bottom line. Smiling like a flower, he obediently lay on the ground and let Jiang Bebe climb up. If you lose, you have to let Uncle Wukong kiss you. The so-called Uncle Wukong was the battle saint ape Qitian. He was 4 meters tall when he didn't transform, like a chimpanzee wearing an iron armor. Whoosh! Amidst Jiang Beibe's cheers and screams, the two of them turned into a black and white rainbow and soared into the sky. Beibei, if you lose, let Uncle Wukong kiss you. Qitian chuckled. Great-grandpa lost. You go and kiss him. The little girl was scared. Her big watery eyes were filled with tears. Uncle Qitian's beard was too prickly. The surrounding people were already roaring with laughter. Daddy, I miss you so much. Come home and see me quickly. The little girl was about 4 or 5 years old. She looked like she was carved out of jade. She wore a one-piece nightgown with 2 upturned pigtails and leaned against the wall. Her big watery eyes were filled with tears as she looked timidly and shyly at the camera. Jiang Tian left Earth in 2014 and fought for 4 years. His daughter was almost 5 years old. Daddy, today is your birthday. I tried to make a cake for you. If you like it, how can you like it? Jiang Beibei held a cake in front of the camera as if she was showing off a treasure. It was made with plasticine. There was also a crooked picture of a man and a woman holding a little girl's hand. In her heart, perhaps the greatest happiness was for a family to be together all the time and never be separated. My daughter is very talented in drawing. Exercise is also not bad. Jiang Tian was overjoyed as he watched the videos. In his previous life he had become an immortal emperor and the god of Hongmeng. In this life, although he had not been reborn for long, he had dominated 2 star systems and stood at the top of the stars. Even the emperors of the human world had to look up to him. However, no matter what status and glory he had never been as proud as he was at this moment. It was as if this weak little girl was his greatest achievement in his 2 lives and his most impressive battle record. So cute. As expected of my daughter, she has inherited our excellent genes. Jiang Tian was very proud. At this moment he wished he could grow a pair of wings and fly to Earth. He wanted to hug this little girl in his arms and kiss and hug her to his heart's content. Yes, Jiang Tian, let's go back and take a look. Zhao Xueqing smiled coquettishly. The twin stars of the South Gate have been liberated and the empire of the ruins of immortality has been overthrown. At least they will not invade Earth again. Of course, since you have become the new master of the heavenly court, the problem of the third star of the South Gate must also be solved. But there is no need to rush. We brought our daughter to the ruins of immortality for the sake of her future growth and cultivation. You can't let the world down, but you can't let your daughter down either. Jiang Tian couldn't help but nod. It seemed that all men in the world were the same. Whether it was a street vendor, a billionaire, or even the leader of a country, a lofty cultivator who had transcended the world, they all had to face the problem of balancing their career and family. Qinger, I have something to talk to you about. Jiang Tian put away his phone with a solemn look on his face. He pulled Zhao Xueqing to a stone bench in the pavilion and sat down. What is it? Seeing Jiang Tian's serious face, Zhao Xueqing also stopped acting coquettishly and said seriously. You have to go to the central galaxy before me. Jiang Tian took a deep breath and said. Chapter 1678. Why? Zhao Xueqing frowned and didn't want to do it. She was already a soul formation cultivator and had led an army to defend the solar system. She had experienced endless killing and hard battles, so she was much stronger than ordinary women. However, she was a woman after all, a woman who valued her family very much. Jiang Tian had been separated from her for 4 years in order to destroy the ruins of deity, which had been very torturous for her. Over the past few years, especially during the Earth Defense War, the belief that had supported her was that once all of this was resolved, her family would be able to live together peacefully. In my previous life, my master wanted to take you away this year. After all, you have the immortal body of the pure phoenix. After Jiang Tian said that, Zhao Xueqing was stunned. So, it's because of me. However, Zhao Xueqing was very smart. She quickly reacted and said, You want me to hide from your master. But I heard you say that the Hengyu celestial sect is one of the 9 celestial sects of the central galaxy, one of the most powerful sects in the universe and has extremely rich cultivation resources. Wouldn't we be able to reach a supreme level faster if we become master's disciples? Well, I have a feeling that my master isn't just taking me in as a disciple. He's up to something. Since it was related to star destruction and the 10,000 orifices demonic infant, Jiang Tian didn't intend to explain it in detail. He said casually, In short, I've lived 2 lives. My experience, knowledge, vision, and techniques have far surpassed the undying teacher. There's no need for me to become his disciple. I can even start a celestial sect on my own. Why should I live under someone else's roof and be restrained by all kinds of things? In fact, even if Zhao Xueqing wasn't involved in his master's plan, Jiang Tian didn't want to go down the old path. There were certainly many benefits to having a supreme celestial sect as his backer. However, there were also a lot of restrictions. Jiang Tian was only a nascent soul cultivator at the moment. Even if he had the power of a soul formation cultivator, he would only be a middle-level disciple in the Hengyu celestial sect. There were still elders and grand elders, and they had to listen to the orders of the sect, carry out all kinds of tasks, and even share part of the treasures they found with the sect. How could one be free and unfettered by establishing one's own sect? But you said Master Undying is from the immortal world and could even be considered a big shot, his magic power reaching the heavens. Can I escape his pursuit? Zhao Xueqing frowned. Even a Dao reunion perfected immortal could easily cover an entire galaxy, let alone the deities of the deity realm. Observing the galaxy was like looking at the lines on one's palm. Nothing in the world could escape their eyes. If I was just a nascent soul cultivator, even if I was a divine-grade nascent soul cultivator, I wouldn't have been able to help you escape the immortal sovereign's search. But the problem is that I'm a reincarnated mighty figure. I know some tricks that even teacher doesn't know, as well as teacher's flaws. Target his flaws and use a special technique to deceive him. He won't be able to find you. Jiang Tian said with a confident smile. The immortal sovereign was a college student doing elementary mathematical Olympiad questions, but he had deviations and loopholes in his thinking. He always made mistakes in certain questions out of habit. And Jiang Tian was a math expert who came up with this mathematical Olympiad. He was particular about pointing out the loopholes in his thinking and using small to win big. Yes, honey, I believe in you. Zhao Xueqing nodded. In fact, she certainly knew that there were great risks involved. However, she always knew that once Jiang Tian made a decision, she shouldn't raise any opposing opinions. They wouldn't be able to influence Jiang Tian's decision, but would only interfere with him. Jiang Tian had thought more deeply about the risks she knew. Jiang Tian said calmly, "Besides, the central galaxy is too vast. There are countless star regions and countless mortal cultivators. Even if he's a deity from the 9 heavens, he won't be able to search through it in a short time." It was like a person trying to find an ant accurately. The former was powerful and could destroy a nest with one blow, killing thousands of ants. However, to find an ant, one had to use a microscope to distinguish them one by one. It wasn't that easy. Then when should I leave? Zhao Xueqing held Jiang Tian's hand tightly. Her clear eyes were full of deep affection and reluctance. The sooner the better. Jiang Tian said in a low voice, "I'll teach you a set of techniques similar to the deceiving the heavens mystic art. It can change your aura and even your memory." Change my memory? Zhao Xueqing was shocked and said, "You're crazy. How can I change or have my memory taken away? My memories and consciousness are the essence of me. If I change them, will I still be me?" Zhao Xueqing had always been gentle and elegant. After cultivation, she had become even more graceful and graceful. She had a bit of a supreme beauty and a motherly model. She had never panicked and lost her composure like this. However, Jiang Tian didn't have any resentment. He knew that Qing'er was acting like this because she was deeply in love with him and didn't want to forget the past. "Okay, then change your appearance and aura." Jiang Tian had no choice but to compromise. The technique Jiang Tian taught Zhao Xueqing was called the immortal art of changing heaven and earth. It was an immortal emperor-level technique that could change one's appearance and temperament. It could even change one's personality. This was completely different from ordinary disguise techniques. Even one's foundation would be changed. From inside out, one would look like another person. The level of the technique was too high. It was full of immortal emperors. Even the Buddhas and Taoist lords in the celestial world wouldn't be able to detect it if they didn't look carefully. Also, it had extremely high requirements for the cultivation level of the cultivator. If Qing'er hadn't reached the soul formation level and was at the deity grade, she wouldn't have been able to practice it. "Then I'll leave the ruins of deity after I finish my seclusion and achieve the effect you want," Zhao Xueqing said gently after Jiang Tian finished teaching her the technique. "No. There's no time to lose. Go to the central galaxy first and then practice this technique," Jiang Tian said solemnly. According to Jiang Tian's calculations, it was already March 2018 and the immortal emperors would arrive on Earth in half a year. "What will you do if Master asks you for information about me?" Zhao Xueqing asked worriedly. No matter how strong Jiang Tian was, even if he had a divine-grade nascent soul, he would be vulnerable in front of a giant from the celestial world. He was like a 3-year-old child. No matter how talented he was no match for an adult boxer. The difference in strength was too great. "I have a plan." Jiang Tian was very confident. That night, Jiang Tian called Yun Zhongzi and said, "Yun Zhongzi, the two of us are going to the Sky Palace to cultivate in seclusion for 3 months. If there's nothing important, don't disturb us." "Yes, Your Majesty." Yun Zhongzi didn't dare to neglect. Soon the Sky Palace was cleared and no one was allowed to enter. The heroes were now important ministers of the new heavenly court. They stood proudly in the sky or rode on starry sky weapons. They were on full alert and guarding. Jiang Tian waved his hand and set up many isolation restrictions. Even a peak stage soul formation overlord couldn't detect anything with his divine consciousness. Then Jiang Tian and Zhao Xueqing entered the Sky Palace. Jiang Tian went to the Space Coordinate Control Station and kept changing the runes. He also turned on the Astral Power Chaos Hole array from time to time to observe the situation on the other side of the Chaos Hole. He kept calculating and modifying. Finally, through the Chaos Hole, a scene that was completely different from what they had seen before appeared in front of the two of them. Jiang Tian's face lit up and he said, "This is it." "Where is this?" Zhao Xueqing looked up and couldn't help but murmur. Skyscrapers rose from the ground and airships shuttled in the sky. On the streets, pedestrians were walking shoulder to shoulder. The men were tall and handsome and the women were tall and slender. They were all extremely handsome or beautiful. On both sides of the street, neon lights flickered. All kinds of floating signs flickered, blooming with all kinds of words and shadows. The lights were brilliant like a city that never slept. It was full of commercial and sci-fi vibes. Zhou Xian immediately felt that this scene was different from before. In the previous worlds connected to the chaos hole, most of them had a strict hierarchy. Mortals and cultivators were clearly separated. But here mortals and cultivators lived together and they were relatively equal. He noticed a detail. An old mortal brushed shoulders with a young golden core cultivator on the street. The old mortal suddenly fell to the ground and pulled the young golden core cultivator, as if blaming the young golden core cultivator for bumping into him. The young golden core cultivator couldn't defend himself and could only pay the price of the crystal. Zhou Xian also noticed that in this place, both cultivators and mortals were brimming with confidence, but they weren't too ostentatious. Business is flourishing, relatively equal and more orderly. Zhou Xian felt that this place was like Earth after the spiritual qi revival. Cultivation and technology were equal, and mortals and cultivators were relatively equal. There were also official organizations to maintain social order, and business was developed. It should be a democracy, not a feudal empire. This is the Star Glory Federation. Jiang Tian said. It's the hometown of Zhuofeng, the king of refining. Zhou Xian's face changed slightly. Chapter 1679. That's right. Jiang Tian nodded. His eyes were firm and sharp. Although this federation is still very weak now, its future is limitless. The key is that many of its ideals are in line with ours. In this life I want to take an unusual path. It's very likely that one day I'll treat this place as my foundation. Zhou Xian nodded. She only wanted her husband to come to her quickly. Let's go. At this time the leaping heaven palace trembled. Countless starlight gathered and the space became more and more solid. Although Jiang Tian couldn't bear it, he had to urge her. How long will it take for you to come to me? Zhou Xian had tears in her eyes. She was reluctant to part with him. Every time she parted with Jiang Tian, it was as if a piece of her heart was torn away. I want to make sure that the Earth is stable and the problem of the third planet of the South Gate is solved. At most 1 year. Jiang Tian wiped away his wife's tears and kissed her smooth forehead. He said softly, Qing'e, since we choose to climb the long path of immortality and live an extraordinary life, we have to bear some things that ordinary people can't bear. You have to learn to be strong and independent. In fact, Zhou Xian was already doing very well. She was sentimental, loyal, and independent. For example, the solar system defense war was almost an impossible task for a woman who had only stepped on the path of cultivation for a few years. One had to know that Tianmu and the other divine generals were old monsters with a lifespan of 1,000 years. Although they were not as strong as Zhou Xian, they had experienced hundreds of battles and were ruthless. They were definitely not easy to deal with. I will. Husband, I'm just a little reluctant. Zhou Xian hugged Jiang Tian's waist tightly. She couldn't wait to rub her delicate body into Jiang Tian's body and become one, never to be separated. She gazed at Jiang Tian's face. Her clear and beautiful eyes were filled with deep emotions. Her tears flowed out, but they were immediately evaporated by her cultivation art. It was as if she wanted to clearly and firmly imprint Jiang Tian's image in her heart. Yes. When we meet again we will have the capital to fight against the immortal emperor. Even if he takes action he won't be able to separate us. Jiang Tian gently stroked Zhou Xian's soft hair. His gaze was incomparably resolute. A desire to become stronger and stronger burned even hotter. It turned into the flames of battle intent that burned crazily. What immortal cultivators sought was to be free and unfettered, to be able to move unhindered between the heavens and the earth, to wield their swords in the myriad rivers of stars, to not be entangled by external objects, to not be controlled by others. Jiang Tian didn't like the feeling of being manipulated. Yes, definitely. Take good care of our daughter. Say hello to your parents for me. Zhou Xian greedily leaned on Jiang Tian's chest and took a deep breath, as if she was infatuated with the smell. Then she let go of Jiang Tian and walked towards the chaotic hole with tears in her eyes. After Zhou Xueqing entered the chaotic hole, she disappeared from the chaotic hole instantly. It was as if she had crossed billions of light-years and boundless galaxies with only one step and landed on the street of a small city in the Star-Glory Federation. Because cultivators were not forbidden to fly in this place, nobody noticed Zhou Xueqing's landing. Jiang Tian even saw Zhou Xueqing waving her hands at him with tears in her eyes. Then the power of the stars was exhausted. The chaotic hole twisted and finally dissipated. Jiang Tian's heart was empty. He stood there in a daze, gazing at the boundless deep sky and the stars in the sky. He didn't move for a long time. This time his reunion with Zhou Xueqing was too short. It had only been a few days. But right now Zhou Xueqing was already light years away. Feel the fingertips that stop at your hair. How to freeze time instantly. Remember to look into my determined eyes. Maybe there is no time left. Facing the vast sea of stars, we are as insignificant as dust. Suddenly Jiang Tian moved and hummed a song. After all, he was an old devil with a lifespan of 10,000 years. His temperament was different from that of ordinary people. His perception of time was also different from that of ordinary people. They would be able to see each other in a few years. For Jiang Tian, who had secluded himself for 500 years in his previous life, it was not a long time. The next moment, Jiang Tian waved his hand and the petal-like dome closed layer by layer. The power of the isolation barrier was strengthened several times. At this time, even if the mighty figures of the deity realm wanted to probe, they would have to put in a lot of effort. Master, you want to take Qinger away? I can't let you succeed. Even if you are a 9 heavens mystic immortal and a venerable sovereign, I'm afraid you will never imagine that your disciple is the reincarnation of a mighty figure who claimed the throne of Hongmeng in his previous life. Right? Although your strength is now 10 times or 100 times greater than mine, I am scheming against you. Besides, in this life I have also taken advantage of Qinger's luck. I don't believe you can beat me. Jiang Tian sat on the ground with a calm face. A disdainful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he snorted coldly. The next moment, Jiang Tian patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd. A constantly changing and twisting substance, which seemed to have spirituality, flew out of the sky-devouring demonic gourd. Creation substance. Jiang Tian's face was slightly stern. His eyes flickered and he said in a low voice, "Creation substance is also called ever-changing substance. In short, this substance has no attributes at all. Its appearance is not certain and it is ever-changing. Using the bloodline seed of the original body or even just a divine soul seed, it can change and reproduce life and have all kinds of divine powers of the original body. It is the best choice to reconstruct the body and use it as a residence." Jiang Tian sneered. Fate was truly making fools of people. Zhou Xueqing had been blessed by the immortal Lord. So many treasures of the ancient deity land had been discovered and obtained by Jiang Tian. But Master would never have thought that the treasures of the ancient Emperor of the Golden Crows in the Tang Valley were among the ancient treasures, including the famous creation substance in the universe. With these, in addition to, Jiang Tian patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd again calmly. A glittering, translucent ball of light, like the most transparent jade, flew out. Through the ball of light one would find that it was shaped like a heart. There were countless light ribbons that connected to the ground like tentacles and roots. Every time it beat, the wood element spirit chi in the outside world would surge and the entire sky-devouring palace would tremble. The heart of wood god. It was taken from the treasure vault of the Emperor of the Ruins Palace. It was said to have come from the era of the wood spirit planet. It was a divine artifact, nourished by an array set up by ancient grand cultivators such as the Tyrant Emperor. Strictly speaking, even though it was called a divine artifact, it was actually just a deity material that formed a complete great Tao of wood spirit. If a person with a special body or talent could withstand it and swallow it, it would be enough to give birth to a postnatal deity with infinite divine powers, a long lifespan and strength comparable to a soul formation grand cultivator. Such a material had endless uses. If many soul formation grand cultivators knew about it, they would be furious. It had a great effect on soul formation cultivators and could increase their power, especially for wood element cultivators. It was comparable to a Tao fruit of a planet. Unfortunately, ancestral patriarch Song Ming, Master Yu Xing and the sword god of the ruins Emperor's palace didn't cultivate wood element divine powers because of their roots, so it wasn't very useful to them. So, Jiang Tian was extremely lucky that the heart of wood god had been preserved and was now in Jiang Tian's hands. After taking out the heart of wood god, Jiang Tian waved his hand again. The lungs of the metal god, the stomach of the earth god, the liver of the water god and the kidney of the fire god. They were all quasi-deity materials that Jiang Tian had ordered to be taken from the ruins of deity. The 5 elements and 5 organs were gathered. Using Qing'er's blood as a seed, she can be reborn with a drop of blood. Using the creation material, she can create a clone of Qing'er with divine powers and cultivation. Then, using these quasi-deity materials and the 5 elements creation art, I can create a deity-grade deity and inject it into it. Jiang Tian's eyes were deep, containing the wisdom of 10,000 years. He murmured, the 5 elements creation art comes from the 5 elements celestial sect. The 5 elements celestial sect is on par with the Hingyu celestial sect, so they naturally keep it to themselves and never reveal it to the Hingyu celestial sect. Even when I became a deity of Hongmeng in my previous life, I remember that Master had yet to understand and master this divine power. Of course he can't tell. After all, whether it was me or Qing'er who cultivated it, they are both acquired deities. It's hard to tell. Creation of heaven and earth, listen to my command. Be reborn with a drop of blood and lead by the divine soul. Jiang Tian patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd again and a drop of sparkling blood floated out and shot into the creation material. At this moment the creation material twisted and changed shape. It seemed to become orderly and not as chaotic as before. The bones stretched, the meridians and blood vessels meandered, the 5 organs formed, the muscles, tendons and other tissues attached and wrapped around the bones and organs. In the end, the skin covered the bones and the creation material had taken on a human form. In the end, hair, nails and eyelashes all came out. It was even more lifelike and looked no different from Zhou Xian. Chapter 1680. At this time, Zhou Xian's clone's hair was hanging down to her waist and her crystal-clear body was emitting a bright light, which made people unable to look at her directly. When the light dissipated, one could see that her eyelashes were drooping, her skin was smooth and her body was curvaceous. Her entire body was rippling with a gentle halo. There was nothing imperfect or out of place, as if she were the most perfect piece of art from the hands of the god of creation. At this moment the clone had a celestial appearance and was extremely beautiful. It was as if all the spiritual energy in the world had gathered in her body. Only the top fairies and saintesses that Jiang Tian had seen in the central galaxy in his previous life could be comparable to her. It's perfect. Creation substances are truly heaven-defying. Jiang Tian was amazed and couldn't take his eyes off her. At this moment, Zhou Xian's avatar was the same as her original body. She possessed the immortal body of the pure immortal phoenix and could even use the various divine abilities of this immortal body. After calming himself down, Jiang Tian stroked his chin. His eyes grew deeper and sharper as he said in a deep voice, "Of course, we have to avoid the immortal emperor's observation. This is far from enough. I still have to create a deity and inject it into her body. Let her have dharma power and divine powers. Creation of the 5 elements. Awaken the divine meridians, god of the 5 virtues, heaven and earth." The next moment, Jiang Tian made a series of hand seals and chanted. He used the divine power of the 5 elements immortal sex creation of the 5 elements to create a deity in the void. The heart of wood god and the other quasi-deity materials were arranged in the air in an orderly manner. Then Jiang Tian pointed in the air calmly. The 5 types of quasi-immortal materials all trembled at the same time, releasing light buzzing sounds, releasing light. Some of the light was green like jade, some suffused with golden light like the golden body of a bodhisattva, and some were like trickles of water, flowing and meandering, miraculous to the extreme, fiercely shooting into the doppelganger's internal organs. The sound became louder and louder. The internal organs seemed to have come alive and released threads, which were actually the manifestation of Dharma laws. They wrapped, entangled and transformed with each other in a chaotic and orderly manner. These law threads actually formed bones, muscles, skin and hair. A miniature person was born in the air. It was completely formed from the laws and contained the fragments of the great Tao. Gods were beginning to take shape. This deity's eyes were slightly closed. She was like a phoenix that had been reborn, a goddess that had descended to the world. She gave off a boundless, ancient, vast, solemn, sacred, and powerful feeling. She was like an eternal and unmoving great Tao that hung high above the 9 heavens, overlooking the myriad of worlds. No power could shake her in the slightest. The threads of law did not stop. They seeped out of the mini-person's body and turned into colorful cocoons that wrapped around the avatar. Creating a god was 10 times or even 100 times more difficult than cultivating to this realm by himself. That divine power was a secret that defied the heavens. Only a few top cultivators in the 5 Elements deity sect knew how to use it. Moreover, it was 10 times or even 100 times more difficult than reconstructing a physical body. Even return to void stage saints and Tao integration stage perfected immortals might not be able to complete this cultivation method. Fortunately, Zhou Xian had cultivated for 10,000 years in his previous life and had reached the peak of the universe. He was too experienced. He had helped the deities, disciples and friends who had their nascent souls reconstruct divine powers several times. That was why he had mastered such a powerful cultivation method. Time flew by quickly like running water. During this time, Zhou Xian even used the time array disk to speed up. But even so, it still took 3 months. 3 months later, the cocoon cracked open, revealing a crack. Then the second, the third. More and more cracks appeared, scrambling to appear. In the end, they covered the entire cocoon. As an incomparably powerful and vast pressure descended, it was as if an immortal had descended upon the world. The entire cocoon shattered with a loud bang. At this moment, even Zhou Xian felt uncomfortable. After all, Zhou Xian had also created a quasi-deity grade soul formation stage cultivator, which was not much worse than Zhao Xueqing's nascent soul formation stage cultivator. At least they were on the same level. There was a divine treasure inside Zhao Xueqing's body. It was like a divine palace and a deity was flying in the sky. At this moment, flowers fell from the sky and golden lotuses appeared on the ground. 10,000 rays of multicolored light blossomed from her body. Clouds and multicolored light rose, making her look extremely mystical. The laws of the 5 elements flew up and down around her, forming specks of starlight. They were like rivers of stars revolving around the deity. She looked like a deity who had created the world and created all things. This was a mini Zhao Xueqing. She was 5 to 6 inches tall and her body emitted a divine glow. A pair of phoenix wings spread out behind her back, and her phoenix eyes were majestic. She looked at Zhou Xian as if she was a god that ruled over the universe and looked down at an ant. A quasi-deity grade deity. Not bad. Zhou Xian let out a long sigh, revealing a gratified expression. There were 5 kinds of essence qi in the world, which were called the connate 5 virtues. When combined, they would form a sacred grade golden core. However, under the nourishment of the stainless phoenix fairy body and the guidance of the bloodline of the creation substance, she had already transcended the level of immortal grade golden core and immortal grade nascent soul to become a quasi-immortal grade god, the phoenix fairy god. This was the most important step. If he only used the 5 elements creation art or other creation divine powers, Zhou Xian would definitely create a 5-element deity or cut off a part of the laws of the great Tao to form a corresponding deity. But it would definitely not be a phoenix deity. Only by using the great divine ability of the 5 elements creation to transform the 5 types of quasi-immortal materials into the 5 elements laws and great Taos, and then borrowing the bloodline guidance technique of the creation substance to change the composition of the laws and great Taos into the Phoenix Lady's laws and great Taos, could he create the Phoenix Lady God. Alright, there's only one step left. Inject the memory. Zhou Xian pressed his right middle finger on his forehead and then flicked it. The demon's soul of purgatory burst out like a rolling black light and came out of Zhou Xian's forehead. It was wrapped in a ball of fiery light. This light contained Zhao Xueqing's life experience. Many scenes flashed like a slideshow. Some of them were already blurry. She saw her mother crying helplessly when she passed away, the boy next door she liked when she was a girl, wearing a white shirt and riding a bicycle. Some of them were extremely clear. She saw her frustration and unwillingness when she married Zhou Xian, and her tears of joy when her daughter was born, of course. These memories did not include the last part of Zhang Tian's relationship with the Hengyu immortal sect and the immortal emperor. These memories had been erased or tampered with, but they were all logical. Even when the immortal emperor searched Zhao Xueqing's memories, he could not find any clues. Only by injecting the memory and forming a self-consciousness can it be considered seamless. Humph, not to mention the immortal emperor, even supreme giants like the Buddha and Tao Master came to observe. They can't tell that this is an avatar. An arrogant smile appeared on the corner of Zhang Tian's mouth. His eyes were full of confidence and could even be said to be extremely arrogant. When two people have the same appearance, the same body, the same abilities, and even the same memories, thoughts, and consciousness, are they still two people? That's one person, but he has two lives. Smack. Under the guidance of the soul devourer's divine sense, this ball of memory entered the sea of consciousness of Zhao Xueqing's avatar. Ah. At this time, Zhao Xueqing's avatar murmured. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. She slowly opened her eyes. Her black and white eyes were clear and bright like jewels. This was the first time she saw this world. At this time, the divine light on her body was restrained, and the sacred aura of the immortal spirit was much fainter. It was replaced by the aura of the mortal world. There was longing, passion, and obsession. This made her seem more like a human. Hubby, is our seclusion over? Zhao Xueqing's avatar waved her hand and wrapped herself in a red robe. Her black hair flew like a waterfall. She walked step by step to Zhang Tian. She took Zhang Tian's arm and sat down. Her beautiful face was on his shoulder. I miss my daughter. I want to go back to Earth. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.